Hey, this is Steve Bloom, and you are listening to the Geekcast Radio Network.
You're listening to the Geekcast Radio Network. Listening to the Geekcast Radio Network's Top 100 Television Show Countdown. Unleash the geek in you.
Hello and welcome to part 3 of the GCRN's Top 100 Television Show Countdown. I am one of your hosts, TFG and Mike, and I am back this week. Last week, I don't know. I was stuck in infomercial land, apparently.
We beat them with drunken pirates.
Drunken pirate, you ass. Okay, so joining us, first of all, is Steve Megatron, the other co-creator. Hello.
Yo, hopefully I don't have to bail this week.
Hopefully no one's computer explodes this week. We have Movie Revolt, or TV Revolt Dan. Hello.
How's it going?
It's going. We have Kevin and Amanda. Hello.
It's Poppin' Pippin. He's got nothing.
I got nothing. I'm sorry.
I don't know how to respond to that.
I'm still trying to figure out the hamster wheel thing.
God. And our special guest in this episode is DJ Valentine. Hello, sir.
Hi, guys. I'm just glad you guys temporarily lifted that restraining order so I can be back on the show. I'm glad I won't burn anything this time.
Well, to be fair, this is your...
When you make comments like that, you have to be careful who you say it to.
Oh, damn it. I'm sorry. I have no inner monologue. I have no...
To be fair, this is your first time on the overall Geekcast Radio main flagship podcast. So anything that happens on Cinema Geeks just doesn't count.
Doesn't count? Yes.
Just think of it as, the Gremlins.
Clean slate.
Yeah.
Protocol.
Clean slate.
Yeah.
Where's my matchbook? Let's go.
Wait. Yeah. Jarvis just loaded the Clean Slate project for you. There you go.
You've mixed Iron Man and The Dark Knight Rises together.
Sometimes genius just happens. Okay, so...
Happy accident.
Since Steve essentially got booted or something happened with him last week...
I had screaming kids.
Yeah.
They weren't happy with the countdown, so they're like, no.
little banshees were up there going, yeah! And my wife was running back and forth, so yeah.
So, and obviously I wasn't here last week, and, I wanted to give this little piece here, Steve and I, a chance to reply to some of the stuff that happened in part 2. It's a good thing I wasn't drinking anything when someone said about the whole 67, 66 thing with Batman, because that was hilarious.
That was Kevin.
Yeah, that was
genius on Kevin's behalf.
Yeah.
I take no credit.
Well, I really do. So, the main things that I don't have a problem with the countdown so far. The only real thing for me is The Shield from FX was my number 2 on my personal list. That show deserves to at least be top 15. That show, in its 7 years, did such amazing things. For it essentially, every FX original series everyone loves now, The Shield launched all of that. I'm sure FX would have had something else do it, but The Shield is what did it in 2002. And yeah, that show deserves to be a little higher. It wasn't until one of our commenters or somebody on Twitter or wherever pointed out about the whole Arrow thing being at 52. I was like, ha, funny.
You say this on the dawn of Bastard Executioner getting canceled. Kurt Sutter, one of the guys who made The Shield, is probably just like, thank you, somebody loves me. Someone out there.
Steve, did you have anything that you wanted to reply to or anything you wanted to bring up before we get into the part 3 here?
No, if they want to hear my comments on what fell where that I was not a part of, listen to last week's Altered Geek.
Or this week's, technically.
No, I think I did it last week, too.
Oh. Yeah, could be. I
don't know. I talked about it both weeks, so.
I've recorded so many podcasts in the past week and a half. I don't.
You're drunk. Go home. Let's move on.
All right. So, the other thing I wanted to bring up was the Cosby Show. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. I'm just gonna say this. Whatever you want to feel about the man, it doesn't take away from what the show did because of what the other actors did, not because of what he did. One of my favorite scenes from that entire show is mostly Felicia Rashad yelling at Sandra. So you're going to hear that, and then Dan's going to come back to start the countdown after this.
And then I'll be working side by side with my husband.
Sandra, what are you saying? You have always wanted to go to law school. You've never talked about anything else.
I changed my mind.
Change it back. After all the money we spent sending you to Princeton? Sandra, you owe us $79,648.22, and I want my money now. I'm not going anywhere till I get my money. I'll take whatever she's got. Empty her pockets. I want to know now. No, I'm not having this. No.
Well, really, both of us, we have to be calm.
You calm down. If Elvin thinks that he is going to come in here and drag my baby off into some harebrained business scheme and ruin what is potentially the greatest legal mind of this century, he's going to have me to deal with. And then he can come to you for treatment.
50.
Alrighty, well, when we started off the countdown at 100, actually at 99, we entered the countdown with someone's number one, and fittingly enough, we are starting the top 50 again with someone's number one that's on the podcast today. It's also visiting a day and a time period that we talked about previously. Coming in at number 50 is none other than Boy Meets World, with 637 points. It was on 8 lists, as highest ranked as number one, as I mentioned, by Steve Megatron Phillips. So fittingly, Steve, I think it makes sense to start with you here. Are you a little upset knowing it's your number one? Are you happy it's in the top 50? Are you upset it's not higher? What are your thoughts?
I'm happy it's in the top 50. I'm kind of upset it's not higher, just because that was like my go-to show as a kid, growing up, watching it on TGIF, and I love the dynamic of the characters and a lot of the issues that it pulled, and while I can see why some of you chose like shows like The Wonder Years or stuff like that, if that's what you grew up with, for me this was like that show. Fittingly, it's the brother of the one from that show, but it's I don't know. I really enjoyed the show and all the stuff it taught throughout its 7 years on television, and then the fact that it's gotten a resurgence in recent years under the new title Girl Meets World, kind of continuing that universe with some of the same character, 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 with
87, right, Kev?
I don't know. I didn't watch it when I was young.
Oh, well. In the late 80s, when Wonder Years was on, I remember watching the show, but now today, I didn't remember a single thing about the show. I didn't remember a single theme song, and the fact that Marv from Home Alone is the narrator for
you didn't remember Winnie Cooper?
Well, everybody remembers Winnie Cooper. I'm saying, as far as the plots go, I didn't remember any of the storylines. So after we had that debate, I went on to Netflix and I watched about 5 or 6 episodes of the first season. That show's just not my style. It just isn't. Boy Meets World by the time that was on, I was 13 to 20, so that was another one of those 90s life lesson shows, and that is a show that I can watch all the time, various episodes. Especially now as an adult, being able to appreciate some of the adult humor with their parents is just awesome. So, Boy Meets World, I'm glad it's top 50. Like Steve, I think it's easily top 25, top 15 at least.
Alrighty, well, let's have DJ. Let's give you your first shot at this list, seeing Boy Meets World coming in at number 50. I know it wasn't on your list. Was it a show you watched? Do you think it deserves where it's at? What are you thinking here?
I think it's pretty high. I mean, I'm a really old person, so I remember Wonder Years. And I kind of was getting into like movies around the time Boy Meets World came out, so I wasn't watching a lot of TV. But I do remember Topanga. That's essentially what
Topanga and Winnie Cooper. Come on, who wins that?
Well, again, I'm going Winnie Cooper because she was my childhood crush. But I mean, not to get chauvinistic here, Topanga was one of the main reasons I was trying to check that show out. And then I was just somehow fascinated that this is the brother of the guy from the Wonder Years. And it's more of, and I like Mr. Feeney. He was in a guy from I think it's the father from The Graduate, I believe. I forget his real name. And it's okay. It's kind of a time where it was kind of like a sitcom, kind of a happier show. Wonder Years felt more of a small kind of mini movie than Boy Meets World, which felt like a traditional sitcom. So it's not really one of my favorites, but I know it has a humongous following, and the fact that it came back with the new incarnation, I think it's a little high, but I can understand it.
Man, I know you had a lot of love for other 90s series. What are your thoughts on Boy Meets World here?
I was definitely a fan of Boy Meets World back in the day. I haven't caught up with the Girl Meets World, but I know that this was 23 on my list. Definitely higher than what we are having here, but I think that I was definitely the age group that it was geared towards, and I connected to it. It was definitely, like I said, part of my nostalgia with the 90s, and I like those little life lessons. That's where I like the Cable Guy. That's where I learned my life lessons. It's TV.
Well, there you go. Cable Guy and Boy Meets World. Did not expect that combination today, but you never know.
You're welcome.
TV teaches me.
Kevin, you like...
Somebody's got to kill the babysitter.
Kevin, you like me and DJ also did not rank Boy Meets World on your list. So what are your thoughts of seeing it coming in here? I know it's probably not surprising, but do you think it's deserving of, being in top 50, being in the top 100?
I don't think so. I'll be the resident hater of 90s sitcoms, I guess. I mean,
hey.
I mean, I didn't have Home Improvement on here. I didn't have Fresh Prince. I don't have Boy Meets World. I don't have Family Matters. I didn't rank any of them. They're all the same show to me. So and it has nothing to do with me growing up. I'll hopefully save my Wonder Years comments for later, but I did not watch that show growing up, so it has no nostalgia. I did not watch Wonder Years until I was 27 or 29 or something like that. So
that's a weird age to start watching it. Like, how did you fall into this?
It was on TV, and I started recording the episodes, and then I started watching, and about 5 or 6 episodes in, I was hooked. And like I said, I'll save my comments. But so yeah, it wasn't about that being a childhood thing for me. Maybe I was not the right age for Boy Meets World and some of these other ones, like I said, Home Improvement, Family Matters. But I just, for me, if I was going to put one of them on the list, it only would have been one. And in the end, I just had 100 shows that I thought were more worthy.
Yeah, I know I did grow up with Boy Meets World. Oddly, when they were in 7th grade, I was in 7th grade. When they were 8th grade, I was in 8th grade. And then they randomly jumped 3 years and graduated when I was still like a sophomore. But whatever. That's how it worked. I did like the show. It certainly has its place. I know, among my age group, it is one of the most talked about or loved shows. It still runs in syndication today, and it's because of how well it did in syndication that it did get another spin-off series. I liked it, but like DJ mentioned, I don't know necessarily if it does much more with the sitcom genre that was done before, looking at other coming of age sitcoms. It was good for what it was, but I didn't necessarily think it transcended anything or it was anything all that special, I guess, beyond just where its relationship to me, if I was thinking objectively, it didn't really doesn't have much award acclaim. It was a fun show, but it just felt it fit in that mold of TGIF, and I don't see it. It's a show that if you gave to the same age group today, like that wasn't meant for in the 90s, would they still like it? I don't know. I can't really say. I don't think they would.
I don't think so, because the thing with today compared to the 90s is, and showing Boy Meets World, don't get me wrong, Boy Meets World shows its age with its references and everything else that's in the show, and kids today just don't understand that. Kids today don't understand half the stuff that happened in the 90s.
To me, it's not even the references, it's just the quality of it would be, like, I like
it's a Disney show now. It would be a Disney, it'd be like iCarly.
Exactly, and it's not a show that...
Now, it's better than iCarly.
No, I'm not saying it's the same. I'm just saying if it came out now, it would be on Disney. It definitely wouldn't be on ABC.
Like it is with Boy Meets World. I guess that's kind of my...
I mean, technically, ABC owns, or Disney owns ABC now, so it's kind of the same thing.
But it's the thing, like it's a very specific age group it's going after. Like it's not like a Home Improvement. You could legitimately, it was all ages from kids to adults. Boy Meets World to me just had a specific age group, and for a specific time. And if I'm looking at top 100, especially top 50, I'm thinking of a show that can go beyond that. So I could see the argument for top 100. I think more so in the 80s, but. It's I definitely could see. I mean, there's a lot of people who had it very highly. With Steve and Mike weren't alone. It was in a top 10 for some other people as well. So there were some people who truly, truly loved the show. But
the last thing I'll say about it is that it's not more so the earlier seasons when they're growing up. It's the later seasons when they have to face adulthood that really make it good. And it can't help that, Kit is in real life with William Daniels.
I knew you were going to bring that up at some point. My whole thing is I would much rather watch this and get more out of it than I would if I watched, say, like Full House or any of those other TGIF programs. So, like, to me, this was like the stronger show in my opinion of those.
Yeah, I would agree it's better than Full House and probably Family Matters, but I don't know. I guess Home Improvement is technically not a TGIF show, but...
Whatever, I love Family Matters.
I know.
God.
I detest Family Matters so much. The only thing I loved about Family Matters was the Key and Peele sketch, but I'm in the minority.
that we talked about that last episode, but all right. Yeah. Well, I think enough of Boy Meets World. I'd like to hear people's thoughts. Go to Geekcast Radio, and let's move on to the next in the countdown.
49.
We're going in a completely opposite direction with our next pick, with number 49, though we are staying in the realm of comedy, but a little bit more, I guess, adults, maybe? I'm not sure. But coming in at number 49 is Curb Your Enthusiasm with 642 points, so only 5 more points than Boy Meets World. It was on 11 lists. The highest ranked was 11 by one of DJ's counterparts. But... Kevin, I think on the countdown, you're the only one that ranked this along with myself. You ranked it at 27. I ranked it at 28. So we were very copacetic when it came to Curb Your Enthusiasm. So it's falling much lower than we ranked it. What are your thoughts on seeing it coming in here at 49?
My only thought was I didn't know if maybe people would eliminate it and put just like Seinfeld on and leave Curb Your Enthusiasm off if they'd kind of lump them together as similar shows, so maybe they would only pick one. But I don't know. I still think the writing in Curb Your Enthusiasm is pretty genius. The comedy is my style, so it's something that I appreciated.
I can't really sit here by the emergency door exit. I think you better get someone else.
Okay, so we're about 3 minutes away from Wheels Up, so you need to just stay put, okay?
No,
we've got a full
you
plane.
don't understand. I can't be sitting here. If something happens, we won't be able to get out.
Calm down, okay?
I cannot do it. I will panic. We will go down.
All we need to know is that you're willing to assist passengers in the event of a non-traditional landing.
I cannot be of any help whatsoever in any kind of non-traditional landing or any traditional landing.
Did you read the brochure?
Read the brochure? I can't read that brochure. It's Chinese to me. Oh, I'm sorry. Are you Chinese? Oh, you look a little Asian. I'm sorry. But it's just an expression. But I don't think you are Chinese. You look maybe Thai. I'm not sure.
Okay, is it the seat or are you just scared to
No,
fly?
I choke under pressure in any kind of game, basketball. If I was on the foul line and towards like the last 5 minutes of the game, I would miss the entire rim.
Okay, I
couldn't even hit the rim because I was choking.
Sir, how about I get you a drink? Would you like a Merlot?
No, thank you. I don't drink. Just please find somebody else to sit here.
I think a lot of circles of people watch this and talk about it, but it doesn't get talked about a lot outside of that, which I don't know. I don't know if it's more of an under the radar thing that not everybody's been exposed to, but I really enjoy Curb Your Enthusiasm.
DJ, any thoughts on Curb Your Enthusiasm?
When I first started watching Curb Your Enthusiasm, I wasn't as knowledgeable in like movies and TV as I guess I am now. I'm not saying I'm super knowledgeable, but I'm way more than I was at the time. And I didn't know Larry David had anything to do with Seinfeld. So when I watched the show and then I figured that out like really fast, I was like, oh, maybe this is just going to be like Seinfeld. But I think that show, it takes what Seinfeld was and it expands upon it into this whole new world that I don't, and it touches stuff that Seinfeld could never, I don't think could touch on basic television, especially the latter series. And
it's the HBO version of Seinfeld.
Yeah, but I mean, even being on HBO where they get to curse and they do all the other stuff, I think it just got to be its own. It got to make its own separate universe. Seinfeld has its own thing with Newman and all of that stuff, but Curb has a completely different but just as huge universe. I mean, I haven't watched some of the latter seasons, but I think I gave up after Cheryl, and I gave up. I mean, I didn't have time to finish watching it, but the whole thing with him sleeping with the woman who hates Jewish people. I think that was like maybe 2 seasons ago or 3 seasons ago. I just saw that one episode like on Fringe. It is you can jump anywhere into Curb and laugh your ass off. For me anyway, that the humor. I know Justin from my show. He's huge on Larry David in Seinfeld. So he was like, man, you have to get back on the horse. Get back on the horse. It's getting when JB Smoother get back on there. He's so funny. Get back on there. And I got somewhat on there, but Curb, I think I give it credit for not just doing exactly what Seinfeld did. It might seem like that on the periphery, but it kind of just takes Seinfeld and expands upon it, which I give it credit for.
Yeah, it's from everything from the way it's shot like cinema verite style. It's almost documentary like, but not completely. It's very much within Hollywood and a lot of very much, the meta jokes and how people play themselves and do it really well. I mean, it does come with a pedigree as well. It's nominated for 38 Primetime Emmy Awards. Technically, it's a show that's not canceled, but yet, but kind of is.
It's so good they can just pick it back up whenever the hell they want.
So wait, essentially, it's going to become the live-action Futurama.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah. It's they've had there was a Clear History movie, which not technically Curb Your Enthusiasm, but very much in the same vein. The way the style is with the improv comedy, it's really Larry David giving people that he his comedian friends and kind of getting together and making a funny show, and it ends up working. It's like
that's a good point, because I forgot all about how that to me is also freaking awesome. I didn't even know that was possible when I heard about the whole. We just have outlines, and then we go. Which is freaking awesome, and it gave me a humongous appreciation for Super Dave Osborne, who I used to hate. Maybe because his humor, I was too young to understand his humor. And if he's one of the funniest people on that show. So yeah, I forget his name. He's Albert Brooks's brother, I believe.
Really? I was not aware.
I think he's related to Albert Brooks in some way. But yeah, great show.
Alrighty, well. For our next countdown, we're going to get into one of the more unique shows that'll be on the list today for sure.
48.
Coming in at number 48, we have Mystery Science Theater 3000. With 648 points, it was on 10 list, as highest ranked as number 2, so it was in one person's top 5. And DJ, let's start with you here, because it was in your top 5 as well at number 4. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on seeing Mystery Science Theater 3000 fall here much lower or higher, however you want to say it, than you had it? So you're a little disappointed it's only at number 48?
I'm glad it's in the top 50. I wish it was higher. I mean, and when you told me to make my list, I was kind of telling you that I'm going to do it on shows that essentially have influenced me. And nothing when it comes for me being for writing and doing skits and doing the podcast and stuff like that, nothing has influenced my humor more than Mystery Science Theater 3000, which is essentially 3 guys, 2 of them being robotic, cracking wise in a movie theater as a show. It used to come on Comedy Central at midnight, and I used to fight tiredom to stay up to watch it. It was so good with Joel. And then they got Mike later. I'm a Joel guy. So in Crow T Robot, and if you've paid attention to any of my shows, I'm heavily robot influenced because of this show. I didn't know. I know that in hindsight, I realized they write a lot of their material, but I was like, man, these are some of the most quick-witted guys ever. And when I realized they write their stuff, and I'm like, oh, well, they're still very, very clever jokes. And it made me watch movies that I would have probably never, Manos Hands of Fate, Space Chief, movies that, Free Jackin' or whatever it's called. I'd have never watched any of these movies. It got me kind of into movies and got me into making fun of movies or just talking about movies. Or hey man, have you seen the Space Chief? Have you seen Santa Claus Meets the Martians? Have you seen any of these movies? Mystery Science Theater is probably one of my favorite comedic shows on television. I'm kind of disappointed it's not higher, but I mean, it's to each his own. So I understand. For me, it's definitely my top 5.
Steve, you also had this ranked on your list. You actually were not that far off at 56. So what are your thoughts on seeing it here?
I'm actually kind of glad it's on there. This is one of those categories that they were films that I would never watch had they not had the goofy commentaries going through them. And I can honestly say this is one of the few instances of DVD, basically movie commentaries that I can actually sit through because it's entertaining and it's funny. Yeah. And I'm not one for B flicks at all, but they made them so hilarious that it was worth watching. And I love the fact that they're finally they've gotten what was it, a Kickstarter or Patreon?
Yeah,
they're coming back.
Their $2 million goal already. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, the following on this show is just epic. Just overall, everybody loves it. That's watched it. There's just a lot to it that is smart and quick-witted. So,
Kev, I know you did not have it on your list, but any thoughts here on Mystery Science Theater 3000?
Yeah, this was one of those that was on my first draft that was in the possibilities, but then it just kind of got weeded out. If I was doing a top 150, it for sure would have been in there. And it should probably have made my list anyways. This is probably one of the best shows ever to put on with a group of, if you were in high school or college, just a group of buddies, and just put it on and drink or do whatever. And it's just it's completely entertaining. You don't have to, you feel like you don't necessarily have to invest in it, or you don't have to, it's not going to tax your brain or anything like that. It's just put it on, have fun with the guys that are cracking all the jokes and with their quick-witted humor. And like DJ and Steve both said, allow yourself to watch movies you otherwise wouldn't have watched, and find out that you can enjoy something for entirely different reasons than you think you can. And so yeah, very intelligent written show, and it's one of those rare ones that's wasn't on my top 100 that I have no problem actually making the top 100.
Great theme song too.
Mike, I also same question for you. It was not on your top 100, but what are your thoughts on seeing it fall here at number 48?
I guess it's all right. I have never actually seen a single thing from this show. I do not remember it at all.
It is on Netflix, so you enjoy yourself.
Yeah, it's on Netflix, and if anyone wants the DVDs, you can go over to shoutfactory.com and get all of the DVDs from Shout Factory.
I mean, actually, I came to the show super late. I actually came to it when it was on Sci-Fi. They would show it in Saturday mornings, it was all right, there's a good 90 to 2 hours I'm going to be doing because I have nothing else better to do. It's one of the first shows to go viral before viral was a thing where it became popular because people are passing the tapes around, similar to how South Park became a thing. And it's also, we talk about TV shows having influence in TV, but it's obviously, as podcasters, a TV show that has highly influenced so many podcasts. The idea of it's such a simple concept that you just wonder, why didn't anyone else do it beforehand? But they do it brilliantly and add a nice little twist to it of just making fun of movies as they're going on. But there's a brilliance to what they're doing, like DJ mentioned. It seems like they're just on the spot saying it, but obviously they put a lot of research in, make the best shows possible. So I think they make it look easy, and then when you hear other people do it, you're like, oh no, this is not nearly as good. You should not do this. Please stop.
I used to watch it scrambled. This is going back to the day when there was something called cable boxes, and I couldn't.
Those are called DVRs now.
Yeah. I didn't have the channel. I think it came on Comedy Central, then Sci-Fi. I didn't have Sci-Fi, but I had a cable box where it was if you went to the channel at a certain spot, it was scrambled enough where you could kind of see what was, because I was so craved for that humor. I never heard anybody tell jokes like that before. So yeah, this show is it's one of the building blocks of DJ Valentine.
Alrighty. Well, let's move on to the next in the countdown as we're getting to our first classic comedy of the day.
47.
We have not had many classic comedies, but we're getting to another one, and some may say it's the most classic of all the classic comedies, as in coming in at number 47, we have The Honeymooners. It was on 9 lists, as highest ranked as number 7 with 655 points. Oddly, I was the only one out of all of us to rank it. I find that surprising. I guess I'll start here with The Honeymooners. I had it ranked, where did I have it ranked? I had it ranked rather high. I had it ranked number 17 on my list, because I know it's only on for one season, but when I think classic comedy, it's one of the first ones that come to my mind. I mean, it kind of provided a type of TV that was never on before, or a type of people, type of style. Like, TV was so polished, everything was so perfect often, and this was a type of family that you would, or type of like family unit that you would never see. People have a lot of problems, yell at each other, and Jackie Gleason, dude, like Jackie Gleason is just great at anything he does, comedy or drama, and he created one of the most iconic characters of all time.
Don't get this into your head. A fishing trip is just like a Turkish bath. It's for men only. I catch the fish, you cook the fish. The only time we're together is when we eat the fish. So it's final, it's settled, and it's over and done with. You are not going on a fishing trip. Hi, Alice.
Sorry I was late, honey. I had some shopping to do, but I'll have your supper ready for you in a minute.
Alice,
Yes?
I want to tell you something.
Well?
I'll tell you later.
Okay.
Doing it live every week. I remember when Drew Carey did a live show, it was like the biggest thing ever. They just did it as the norm then, and it really melded the stage presence to television as TV was really starting off. So I honestly think it should be higher. I'm glad it's on the list. I'm glad it's in the top 50, but for me, it's a top 20 show, despite the fact it's only was on for one season. Because when it was on, it was rather popular, and I think we look at iconic shows, I think it ranks up there. But Kev, let's start with you here. Any thoughts on Honeymooners falling in here at number 47?
I guess this is another one I don't necessarily have a problem. I think this somehow just kind of got lost in the shuffle as I was sorting shows and ranking shows and looking at different aspects of it, because I have liked what I've seen of that. I haven't seen any episodes for a long time, but when I was a kid, I remember still thinking it was funny. It is iconic, like you're talking about, even though it was only on for one season. I think somehow it just kind of got lost in the shuffle with some other classic comedies that I was considering, and I was kind of, when you said it, I was looking for where I ranked it on my list, and I was like, oh, I guess I didn't. But it definitely would be in consideration for a spot if I was doing it again and somehow didn't lose it in the shuffle, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, there's a lot of shows, it's easy to lose stuff. But Mike, any thoughts on The Honeymooners?
I remember a lot of the quotes from the show. I mean, who doesn't remember "One of these days, Alice"? I mean, come on.
Spousal abuse.
Okay, but that was a different time. Okay, the Honeymooners is actually, TV's answer to Nick and Nora. Honestly, I mean, seriously, come on. But I honestly cannot. The two things I remember from that show, one has something, like I said, all the quotes and the lines and stuff like that. And the other thing is, I've seen this one. This is a repeat. It just came on from when Marty went back in time.
Now we can watch Jackie Gleason while we eat.
Yeah, exactly.
DJ, any thoughts on The
Honeymooners? I really need to go back and watch that show again.
DJ, any thoughts on The Honeymooners?
Again, this is a show I didn't grow up with. You
didn't grow up with it? You weren't born in 1970?
I'm old. I'm pretty old. I'm Highlander old. No, I was introduced to Jackie Gleason through Smokey and the Bandit because I'm a huge Smokey and the Bandit fan. And then people in my family who were older than me were like, yeah, it's Jackie Gleason. You don't know Jackie Gleason? I'm like, no, this guy's awesome. He's so funny. He's like, you should watch The Honeymooners. And I sat down and watched a couple episodes when I was very young. And I was like, wow, this is irreverent. like you're saying for the time. I mean, this is essentially the precursor of shows like Married with Children, which might not be on my list.
You sound almost ashamed of that.
No, I'm not ashamed. I love the show. But yeah, it's essentially the joke that they're saying in that show, especially the bam, zoom to the moon, all that stuff. I'm like, wow, they could get away with this back in the day.
Of course.
Holy crap. You couldn't get away with that now. But no, these are just geniuses at work. You got Art Carney, you got Jackie Gleason. These are like the types of shows, this and I Love Lucy, that you it's like the Mount Rushmore of television shows. It may not be an influence on me, but I definitely respect it.
Yeah, for sure. I watched it a lot because my parents were big fans. I mean, it's only had 39 episodes, so it had a few type of revival shows in here and there, but they call it the classic 39. I think are pretty certainly have their impact on TV. So, all right. Any other thoughts on the Honeymooners before we move on to the next in the countdown?
It influenced, and it pretty much is the inspiration for the Flintstones.
Yes.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And there was also the Honey Mousers from Looney Tunes, and I really want to think. I know Mel Blanc had his big deal, and his name was on all the voice characterization, but I really want to think that was Jackie Gleason playing the mouse version of Ralph.
Honey Mousers. That's a throwback right there.
That's Mike's specialty. And we'll have another throwback with our next in the countdown.
46.
Coming in at number 46, it's coming from a time period that we've not been in all that much, surprisingly, but I think there will be one person on the episode that's at least happy that it's on the list. Maybe not happy it's high enough. Coming in at number 46, we have, you gotta love it when a list comes together.
Oh.
We have the A-Team. It was on 9 lists, as highest ranked as number 5 by none other than TFG1 Mike, and it received 658 points. Only 3 more points than the Honeymooners. Not many people that will rank A-Team higher than the Honeymooners. That's what you get here at Geekcast Radio. So Mike, let's start with you here, as you had it ranked at number 5.
You want to know the ironic thing? I just started watching the first episode like 5 hours before we did this recording.
Gotta get prepped.
Yeah, exactly.
So you upset it's not higher? What are your thoughts seeing it here at number 46?
Even though I'm a diehard kid of the 80s, I can't expect all the 80s shows to be top 10, top 20. So 46 is... I would say A-Team at least deserves top 30, at least at number 30 maybe. The show characterized 4 very different personalities with Hannibal, with B.A., with Face, and Murdoch. And you always had this sense of, especially with B.A. and Murdoch, I ain't flying with that fool. I mean, you just can't help but quote Mr. T. It's just one of those things where their quote-unquote friendship is just endearing. It really, really is. And what people may or may not realize is these are a group of military men. That's the other strong thing about their friendship. And while, it's great that MacGyver can do all the stuff they do by himself, watching each of them forming the plan that comes together in each episode to do what they do to stop the bad guys, to get, justice for their clients. People might say, oh, but they're just soldiers of fortune. They charge people money. But, well, they got to be able to do the next scheme or the next adventure. So I absolutely love the A-Team. Coming in at 46, I don't think it's a bad thing. I'm glad it made top 50.
Amanda, we haven't heard from you a little bit. Any thoughts on the A-Team at all? Is a show that you caught up with? I know it's one that's kind of in the zeitgeist, even if you didn't see it. So, do you think it's deserving of this high rank?
I think that's a good spot. I didn't see too much of the show. My interaction with A-Team has been the movie version with Rampage Jackson and
For shame.
That movie aside, I think that it's super iconic. Definitely made Mr. T a huge icon, and I think that it's definitely deserving of the top 50.
Steve, you actually had it ranked at 51, so you're not that far off. So you're happy where it's fallen?
Oh yeah, I'm happy where it fell. I I really enjoyed the show. I love the theme song. I love the casting. Just the whole, Soldiers of Fortune thing. That was one of the fun parts about the show. And then the witty banter between the different and strange personalities that you had throughout the show. So, it's very simple, but it's very, very fun. So.
And say what you will about the movie, I'm sorry.
It's good, but it doesn't replace the original
It
act.
should have been so much better.
Okay, yes, it should have been so much better. But in the performances way, Liam Neeson was a damn good stand-in for George Peppard. And just seeing, what's his name?
Bradley Cooper?
Yes. Just seeing Bradley Cooper and Dirk Benedict interact in the
in the sauna.
In the sauna scene, that was just epic. It really, really was.
Kev, last week we talked about how there was not much 80s representation, which is odd for her countdown at Geekcast Radio. So I'm guessing you're not too surprised that it's falling here at number 46.
I'm not too surprised, and I definitely think it's an iconic name, and it has iconic personalities and characters involved. Me personally, I'd probably put 5 or 6 other action shows from the 80s ahead of it, and as far as quality goes. But it does have the name recognition, so I'm not surprised it shows up.
DJ, any thoughts on the A-Team?
Oh man, I might be the wrong guy to go here because I freaking love this show. I ate Mr. T cereal. I watched the Mr. T cartoon show. I had the car, the die-cast van. Me and my friends for Halloween, we dressed up as the freaking A-Team. I was George Peppard because he is my favorite member of the A-Team. I love the A-Team so much. And I think that was really what angered me about the movie. It wasn't even angering me about the movie. I love that show so much. And and all the pieces that were there, it should have worked so much. You got Bradley Cooper and Liam Neeson and Charlton Copley and Rampage Jackson, whatever. And then you have Joe Carnahan. Yeah, Joe Carnahan as a director. I'm like, this should have been so much better. Guy who did Narc, let's go. And it's just kind of like, again, it's my childhood bias. And I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong. I've always wondered this. George Peppard's character, Hannibal. Awesome. He wore, because my costume was the gloves. I had the black gloves and I had the cigar and I had the members only jacket. He had burn marks on his hands. Is that what was going on where he wore the gloves all the time?
I'm not sure.
I have to rewatch it. I remember him because he'd be on the cover of the DVD. He's wearing the black leather gloves, and I go, I wonder why he. I think it's
was it a tribute to Michael Jackson? It wasn't.
Oh wow! No, you didn't just go there.
With the Michael Jackson.
Did you just 3 snaps and Z formation over there? Because that's what that sounded like.
I think it was 2 snaps and a twist. I think.
And all I can think of is Kit from Knight Rider back in '82 in Part 1. Can Michael Jackson moonwalk?
But no, A-Team is awesome. I love the show so much. I don't know. I can't remember where I put it. It might not even been. I had to fight my heart in my head when I was making my list. So if it was my heart, it'd be really, really, really high. But yeah, I love the A-Team.
Well, now that I know you're a super fan, I've got plans for you podcasting-wise regarding the show.
Let's do it.
Be scared. Be very scared.
Shut up, Dan.
All right. Well, for our next in the countdown, we always have those shows of the countdown that people talk about. I think this will probably definitely be one of them.
45.
Coming in at number 45, it wasn't inevitable you would get here sometime. The question was when. At number 45, we're having another superhero show, another CW superhero show. Arrow fell at 52. The Flash is falling at number 45 with 692 points. Highest ranked as number 3, of course. And was on 9 lists. And I know, Mike, you had this in your top 10 at number 10. So again, 2 shows in a row, 2 shows in your top 10 going down. Little upset that The Flash is falling here at number 45.
Well, first of all, I want to throw somebody under the bus and ask Kevin why he thinks the writing is so bad in this show.
When did I ever say the writing was bad?
You said the writing was bad and the show was cheesy.
No, I was referring to Gotham.
Okay.
That would be correct. That would be correct.
That was all about Gotham.
It sounded like you were talking about The Flash in that comment. But anyway, The Flash, no.
Trained monkey.
I just said on this week's Altered Geek that until this show, I didn't care one bit about learning anything about Barry Allen. I grew up with the Justice League Unlimited, DC Animated Universe, and Wally West was my Flash. And having this show come out of Arrow, and I wasn't upset that it was Barry and not Wally or whatever, I was interested because at that point when Arrow debuted the thing, it it was cool, and I love the effects, I love the cast, the action in the show is just great. Some people might say that season 1 was a lot of villain of the week. I don't see it that way because at least after episode 15 or 16 out of that 22 episode season, 22, 23, however many they had, I think they had 23, I don't know, whatever. After episode 15 or so, the show started to go in a direction of following the timeline and dealing with Harrison Wells and dealing with him being Eobard Thawne and everything else. And season 2 has only kicked it up even more. It really has with the whole breaches thing, and now we have the Infinite Earths and all that. And the way I look at the Flash at this point is season 1 was Flashpoint, season 2 is Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Yeah.
And I just can't wait to watch every single episode of this show. It's just so good. I think the coolest thing they did, the coolest comedy moment they did was actually in season 1 when they actually said, hey, look, here's Grant Gustin. He used to be on Glee, and they had the karaoke episode. I thought that was awesome.
Steve, you had this at number 4, actually the second highest ranker of The Flash. So what are your thoughts at seeing it fall all the way at number 45?
I'm sad. I thought it was at least top 25. I really enjoyed it. This is probably one of the most enjoyable superhero shows for me out of all of the ones that I've ranked, and to see it fall this low, or this place in the list, just has me sad. The special effects are great for what it is. It's got one of the highest rankings. It's actually caused CW to actually be one of the highest ranking channels due to this show alone. And the fact that it's, for those that love Daredevil, okay, I get that. But for anything that's on television right now that's actually on TV, I think The Flash is the strongest one out of all of them.
Amanda, let's throw it over to you. Thoughts on seeing this? I know we had a lot of people think it's too low. Do you think it's too high and it's more of a product of the superhero bias we are known and loved for?
I think it's definitely a product of our geek bias here with the comic book stuff. I've seen some of this when it first came out. I dragged Kevin along through the first couple episodes, and I don't think that we got very far in it at all. We were trying to match it up with our Arrow watching at the same time. I even watched Flashpoint Paradox for this to try to get a feel of it, and it was okay. I don't think it's as good as Arrow. I'm surprised that it's beating out Arrow, honestly.
Interesting. DJ, thoughts on The Flash? I know you're more of a Marvel fan, if I'm not mistaken, but...
Well, I live tweet Flash and Arrow and Supergirl for at Channel Superhero, and we talk about Flash and Arrow comparisons on our show all the time. I think the difference between Arrow and Flash is that Arrow... One, it was the litmus test for this. Well, I guess Smallville was, but this new iteration of Greg Berlanti stuff. Arrow hit its stride probably season 2, and it kind of got lost its way halfway through season 3. Flash hit its stride midway through season 1, and its consistency of the show is just so... It doesn't lose its consistency. Arrow kind of gets a little herky-jerky now, where you don't know what it's kind of unsure tonally. Flash from the get-go, it's probably one of the most. I wouldn't say it's my favorite comic book show. I am one of those Daredevil guys, but it's probably the most consistently good show of all the comic book shows. You can find an Arrow stinker in there somewhere, or even a Daredevil stinker, which is very hard for me to find. or definitely an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. stinker, or an entire season of Gotham, which all stinks. But Flash is just consistent, and one of the positives of the show that is probably overlooked by everybody. Grant Gustin, I apologize. I didn't think he was going to be that great when I heard about him, and he's great. But it's the supporting cast around him that makes that show so good. Jesse L. Martin, Joe, who I always say as I'm live tweeting the show, is my favorite character on the show. He is such a grounding force to that show. Any scene with him and Grant Gustin, Barry, if you read it on a paper, it's the most cheesiest, cliched thing you've ever read in your life. But they are such Jesse L. Martin especially, and maybe John Wesley Shipp, the original Flash, they're such good at portraying this cheesy thing in such a realistic and actually endearing manner, which I think Arrow sometimes has problems doing. Their actors around Stephen Amell aren't as strong as you got Tom Cavanaugh, you got Jesse L. Martin, John Wesley Shipp, as I mentioned, Mark frickin' Hamill will show up once in a while. It's such a consistently good show. So I would say this is high because it's so new, but I can understand.
So I definitely need to finish watching at least the first season.
Yeah. If you hit your anchor onto the supporting actors, first off, Cisco gets way better on that show. At the first 4 episodes, I hated him. I was like, I hate this guy. Please stop talking. Even when he was on Arrow, I was like, please stop talking. Please stop talking. But now he gets every good line of the show. It's now the Cisco. When I'm live tweeting it, it's the Cisco watch. When is going to be the Cisco line of the night or something? And they got great character. Victor Garber, I forgot about, will show up and just do great performances on that show. Arrow is kind of lacking in that strong. Other than Barrowman, they don't have a really strong grounding force around Stephen Amell. It's Stephen Amell essentially carrying it because it's not Laura Lance. It's not Thea.
No.
It's Barrowman. It's probably David Ramsey for Diggle, and that's about it.
I love
really.
Diggle.
And Felicity, who got good and sucked last season. They effed up her character, but there's everybody around Grant Gustin on that show is a veteran good actor. So yeah. Flash is a great show. For me, it doesn't beat out Daredevil, but it's still a very, very good show.
It is very strong, overall between all the people, and I do agree. Cisco does get better with time, and especially with season 2, he has a more amped up role because of events that happened at the end of season 1. So it's definitely it's only gotten stronger. Whereas a lot of the other superhero shows kind of have ups and downs. And even talking like Gotham only got good in season 2, season 1 blew through most of it, and then you get Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the third season actually starting to get better, and Arrow the season's better now. So I mean, overall, Flash is the only one consistently getting better at each episode.
Kevin, usually when we get to the top 50, the question usually stops being, do these shows belong in the top 100, and more so, they should belong. Is this one of the shows where we're seeing that maybe doesn't belong in the top 100?
Well, I mean, you asked before about a superhero bias. We have Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. on our top 100 TV shows of all time. So the only thing that's surprising me about our superhero bias is somehow a show like Gotham somehow didn't make the list. Thank God. But
yes.
But I mean, I'm surprised it didn't with some of the other stuff that we've seen. So, I mean, I think The Flash is a great show. I mean, I've only seen about a third or a half of the first season. And, I like Arrow. I like Flash. I really, really like Daredevil. And so all these shows are good, but Flash and Arrow being top 50 around that mark of all time, that's a little bit high. If at all. I mean, I could see this maybe if they came in the 90s or something like that.
Yeah, I didn't rank The Flash or the Arrow. I like The Flash a lot. Arrow, like I said last week, as DJ mentioned too, it's way too inconsistent for me. Flash is a good show. I'm not saying this as a knock against The Flash, but you're talking about top 50 shows of all time, not, top 50 shows of today, definitely. Of all time, I don't know, we talked about Curb Your Enthusiasm, The Honeymooners. Am I putting The Flash in that same category? No. If I'm comparing it within its genre of the superhero shows, it's certainly up there. But I don't. If we're getting into the best of the best, don't necessarily see it yet. It's potential. I don't know. I enjoy it, but it's not something where I feel that it's deserving at this point. Where I know I have ranked current shows that only are in one season, and I've enjoyed The Flash. But like looking at Mr. Robot, in DJ's favorite show that we talked about last week, looking at that season compared to this, I think Mr. Robot's far more deserving based upon what it's done than The Flash. Not saying, again, it's not a bad show, it's an enjoyable show, but I think it's more so if you remove the fact that superheroes, and then I don't know if it would be nearly this high.
Well, this might give hope to those people that were holding out hope that they might see something like the Incredible Hulk show up. I mean, if the Flash is showing up, maybe we'll get some classic stuff.
I mean, we live in a world where Gorilla Grodd shows up in multiple episodes of it. I mean, if you're not a comic book reader, the absurdity of them doing a TV show where Rainbow Warrior shows up and Wentworth Miller is Captain Cole is just, I'm sorry, for a comic book old geek like me, it's just kind of, I'm not a DC, I'm a Marvel over DC, but I've read DC's and I know some of how kooky Flash's Rogues Gallery is, and these guys seem to figure out how to not shy away from it, play upon it, or, use the absurdity to their advantage. And Arrow is only good now when he's with him. When Arrow shows up on The Flash, it's like, that's the Arrow I love. Where has that Arrow gone?
Well, you said earlier that Arrow is kind of herky-jerky, and all I can think of is, so essentially what you're saying is Arrow is essentially Humpty Dumpty just dangling on the wall.
I will say Arrow does have this every other season thing, kind of like the Star Trek films. It's the first season's not very good, second's great, third's not very good, and then the fourth is great so far.
I'm just worried about Flash. Like, this is the second season. This is when Arrow hit its stride, and then it fell off a cliff, literally.
I just think there's a lot more to do with the Flash, though, than with Arrow. Like, Arrow's having to tap into, like, a lot of other DC's rogues galleries.
They're just doing Batman with Green Arrow because they can't use Batman for some reason.
Which is ridiculous.
It's fine. I just wish you'd, I don't know. It just seems like it's half boiled. I know you guys probably already talked to Arrow to death last time, so I'll just stick with Flash. Flash is just so you can just see it. It's consistent. I just hope it doesn't again fall off a cliff, literally like Arrow did.
And it's such a fun show, even when at the end of season 1, and I'm trying my best not to spoil this for Kevin and Amanda. Even at the end of season 1, going into season 2, how it got so dark.
Yeah.
It didn't get dark like Arrow got dark. It still had a light-hearted humor to it underneath the tones that were dark. And that's what works. You mentioned earlier about Jesse L. Martin.
Yeah.
As soon as I saw him cast as Joe West, I'm like, oh my God. It's Mr. Law and Order himself. It's like, oh my God. Yes, and he's playing a cop. That's great. That works.
He owns every single scene he's in. He owns the scene.
Have you seen the most recent episode?
Yeah, I have to.
The three of them. All three. Barry, Joe, and Henry. No, Henry.
Ship. Well,
they owned that entire ending scene. That was amazing.
There's a scene not this episode that just aired, the episode before. I won't spoil anything, but something happens with Flash, and Tom Cavanaugh is essentially trying to be this big bad mean dude, and Jesse L. Martin is angry, and he slams Tom Cavanaugh against this wall. And it's the most real. I was like, whoa. It was just such a great moment because it was real. I just like, oh my God. Jesse L. Martin is just owning this show. He's not going to get the credit because he doesn't run super fast or have any powers. He's just a good man who's a father figure to Barry, which is a grounding force, which Arrow is severely lacking right now. So, I mean, other than Felicity, there's not a lot of grounding forces around Stephen Amell, acting-wise.
You know what that scene reminded me of? Good Will Hunting. Don't you ever disrespect my wife again, or
yes,
I'll end you.
That scene.
You.
Perfect example. Because it made me jump like, whoa, yeah, all right. And then I understood it like, yep, he doesn't give a crap about how cool you think you are or any of that stuff. You mess with my family, I'll kill you. That was just such a realistic moment, I thought.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All righty, well, let's move on to the next in the countdown.
44.
Alrighty. Well, coming in at number 44, we're actually traveling to a ground that we saw a lot of so far in this countdown, surprisingly, which is been one of the big surprises as we go back to the world of sketch comedy. As in coming in at number 44 is Chappelle's Show with 694 points. It was on 11th list, as highest ranked as number 3. Actually, DJ, I will start with you here as you had it at number 10. So again, situation where it's not nearly as high as you ranked it. A little disappointed we are not seeing Chappelle's Show higher than number 44.
I think the flaming out of the Chappelle Show and that kind of ghost season that happened while Dave was in Africa trying to find himself again, kind of might have tainted it a bit. You have to understand, when Chappelle's Show came out, it was like a phenomenon. It wasn't just like, oh, that was really funny. Everybody at any walks of life was talking about Chappelle's Show. Did you see that sketch? You see the Rick James sketch? Did you see the Prince basketball sketch?
Or
Did
Kelly
you see
sketch,
the race draft? Did you see that? I mean, every sketch was. I mean, you watch SNL. There's like one sketch maybe out of 3 episodes that are like, oh, that was really funny. Every sketch on Chappelle's Show was just knocking it out of the park. And this is why I kind of like Key and Peele. Even them, who I love a lot, they'll have a sketch in there that's kind of like, that was all right. Chappelle was knocking them all out of the park, and you were just seeing a comedian really at the height of his powers, almost Eddie Murphy-like. I'm not saying he's as good as Eddie Murphy, because Eddie Murphy was he was like a freaking icon. He still is. But it was just like such a rise to power. And even as you see, Chappelle knew he was rising very fast, and that pressure this was so much to bear. But that show is so great. I'm looking at it right now. It's on my calendar. Both seasons of the Chappelle Show. I have season 1 and season 2. It is so funny. And the drop off in comedy after that show went off the air, it's like a black hole. It's the gargantuan in Interstellar. It just sucked up. When Chappelle left, there was just an abyss of no comedy until Key and Peele kind of showed up, which I think it's not. Key and Peele is a great show, not as good as Chappelle's Show, but they're like a nice ointment for the burn left after Chappelle left.
It definitely, I think, Key and Peele started them getting much better shows than they had in a long time. A show that was not Tosh.0. Kevin, I know we talked about the fact that sketch comedy being a big surprise, and you mentioning that you'd be surprised if we saw more modern sketch comedy than classic sketch comedy. Was this one that you're surprised at seeing as we're getting Chappelle's Show here at number 44?
No, I'm not necessarily surprised at seeing it. It does support the fact that somehow we're going to see more modern sketch comedies than classic, when I think it was much more of a staple for classic TV in the 50s and whatnot. I ranked 6 sketch comedies in my top 100. This just was on the outside looking in. If I was to add 1 or 2 more sketch comedies, this would have definitely been one of them. So, I mean, I agree with you, everything you guys have been saying about Chappelle's Show and how popular it was. And like DJ was saying, the biggest draw to it was the fact that it was hit after hit after hit, where there's been times when Saturday Night Live can get to that point, but it's been, for me, a long time since it's been that. And there's a lot more misses on Saturday Night Live than you got with Chappelle's Show. I don't know if it's fair to judge, 3 years versus decades of shows, of course, yeah. But I mean, Chappelle's Show is great. I wish it would have. I was kind of getting into it the most right as it kind of fizzled out, so it was kind of a bummer. But I think it's deserving of being in the conversation, regardless of if it's on the list or not.
Amanda, any thoughts on Chappelle's Show?
I actually ranked it at number 98. I wanted to put it higher, but I just had so much on my list that I couldn't squeak it in. Who doesn't like the black white supremacist skit? I thought that was awesome. I have that entire skit memorized. I love it so much. I think he was super revolutionary, and I think he took, like DJ said, that Eddie Murphy, Richard Pryor feel and turned it into something modern that people could really get behind, and put a bunch of stuff out there that people were too scared to bring up, or they didn't want to risk their reputation, but his whole reputation was based on this controversy, and he made it happen.
Yeah, and I remember being one of the first shows that it was like a web hit, in the sense that the night after it came on, I was in high school and we were going to the computers and we were watching those skits and trying and the back
You had
in the,
computers when you were in high school?
they did.
Oh,
They
take up a
We
whole
know you just
room?
had a birthday, Dan.
I know.
Handy computers.
They were the size of a room, and
Do you want to play a game?
Exactly. We had
Welcome to
Pong. It was
Windows
a good
1.0.
time. It was a good time. But yeah, I remember being one of the first shows where it was an internet sensation as well because of just how great it was, and I think it could have even it didn't drop off because it dropped off not because of quality but just because of factors outside of the show, and if Chappelle stayed with it, it could have even been better. But what he did do was certainly phenomenal, and the fact that it still gets run on Comedy Central and it's still like one of the best rated shows on that network, even though it's not been on the air or new episodes for over a decade. So it does show you that the quality of that show. Alrighty, let's move on to next in the countdown.
43.
Coming in at number 43, we're going to one place we were at once so far, going back there again. We've talked about different networks and things of that like that. FX has been dominated in the countdown. Well, we had one Netflix show, and we're getting another Netflix show. Coming in at number 43, we have House of Cards with 694 points. It was on 11 list, highest ranked at number 4, so it was in someone's top 5. DJ, I'll again start with you because you did have this on your list. So what are your thoughts on seeing House of Cards drop here at number 43? Think it's too low, too high, good spot?
I think it's a little low. I think time's going to tell. This is one of the most successful remakes of a show because this is up there with The Office, I guess, because this is the British miniseries. House of Cards is also very renowned and people like. But if you watch this show, man, it is. People talk about Scandal. And I was having a big discussion with my sister, who's a huge Scandal fan. She's like, "Why don't you watch Scandal?" Because I go, "Well, I can watch House of Cards, which is a better written, better performed show with Oscar-winning actors and Oscar-nominated directors with the same kind of subject matter, and enjoy that in a movie form with no censorship." That's why I watch House of Cards and not Scandal, because you got Kevin frickin' Spacey, all right? David Fincher that directs the pilot.
Oh. President-elect Garrett Walker. Do I like him? No. Do I believe in him? That's beside the point. Any politician that gets 70 million votes has tapped into something larger than himself, larger than even me, as much as I hate to admit it. Look at that winning smile, those trusting eyes. I latched onto him early on and made myself vital. After 22 years in Congress, I can smell which way the wind is blowing. Oh, Jim Matthews, his right honorable vice president, former governor of Pennsylvania. He did his duty in delivering the Keystone State, bless his heart, and now they're about to put him out to pasture. But he looks happy enough, doesn't he? For some, it's simply the size of the chair. Ooh. Linda Vasquez, Walker's chief of staff. I got her hired. She's a woman, check, and a Latina, check, but more important than that, she's as tough as a $2 steak. Check, check, check. When it comes to the White House, you not only need the keys in your back pocket, you need the gatekeeper. As for me, I'm just the lowly House Majority Whip. I keep things moving in a Congress choked by pettiness and lassitude. My job is to clear the pipes and keep the sludge moving. But I won't have to be a plumber much longer. I've done my time. I've backed the right man. Give and take.
Robin Wright, if you know anything about me, I'm a huge proponent of strong female characters, and Robin Wright might play the strongest female character we've seen on television in maybe 20 years. It's essentially Macbeth, and it's just, she is the Lady Macbeth of this show. And what got me, kind of a spoiler alert, there's a sequence that happens in the first maybe 1 or 2 episodes, maybe the first episode, where Kevin Spacey's a politician, he kind of cheats on Robin Wright with this other character, and when he comes home, you're just going to see how is this going to play out, and you realize she knows all about it. She doesn't care anything about that. Their relationship is strong enough to where it's about power for them. Sex is a tool to get what they want. It's such a well-written, and the way Robin Wright performs, it's such a well-written, well-performed show from top to bottom. And I know if you're not into politics and stuff, it could get a little, over your head stuff. All you got to do is just tie your boat to Kevin Spacey. He is the driving force of this show, on top of the fact that he's breaking the fourth wall. And as a Deadpool fan, any guy who breaks the fourth wall Ferris Bueller. It's great. It's great. And the season that this passed was probably the weakest of the seasons, but still, as weak as it could have been, it's still Kevin Spacey just killing it on that show. One of probably the best actors working right now. So yeah, House of Cards, great show for me.
Yeah, it's as someone who loves monologues, House of Cards is perfect because Kevin Spacey has a bunch of them. Nearly every other episode, just him and his, like you said, breaking the fourth wall monologue, having that Fincher style to it, the cinematic feeling. There's this like dark, ominous tone throughout the series. I kind of love season 2 the most because it gets so just outrageous, like soap opera, just crazy at times, where it's like, okay, there's no barriers anymore. They're just going to be super cheesy is a strong word, sleazy maybe, and like just revel in it. They're going to go some really interesting places, like you mentioned. I thought season 3 was probably, it just felt like season 3 just was trying to lead to something and didn't quite get there.
Well, they weakened Robin Wright, which I kind of got upset about because I'm telling you, she's my favorite character on the show because she is such the anti-cliched woman in a television show like this, where it's like, oh, she'll complain about this. No, she won't. She'll revel in it. Or she'll revel in this. No, this affects her. It's like she does everything that you think how she's gonna react is the complete opposite, and it's so interesting to watch her play it.
It's also a show that has a huge impact just because it legitimized Netflix as a location for television. It kind of put all of its money in the basket of House of Cards, and it ended up paying off. It was nominated. It was the first web series nominated for major Emmys for Best Series, Golden Globes as well. Kevin Spacey has been nominated, Robin Wright as well. So it has a pedigree there. So it was. There's a lot of pressure on House of Cards to succeed, and if it didn't succeed, Netflix may not be what it is now. We may not get shows like Daredevil or Jessica Jones because House of Cards isn't successful. Who knows what happens with Netflix? So it ended up paying off and people loving it. I know people when the series is coming out, I knew people who would take the day off because they want to sit home and watch the entire series.
Oh yeah, I was one of those people. I binged season 2. I ran through that. I was like, I got to make a weekend of this because I was just going to watch the whole series. And again, it's just great. It just attracts Corey Stoll, Jodie Foster directed a couple episodes. Just so much talent has run through that series. It's phenomenal.
Alrighty, well, I'm trying to come up with a non sequitur for our next entry as we get into number 42.
42.
Coming in at number 42, we're going to an area we're very familiar with when it comes to the world of the top 100s, as in the world of animation, as we're getting another animated show, our third of the countdown so far. Coming in at number 2, we have Family Guy with 697 points, so only 3 more points than that of House of Cards. It was on 11 lists, as highest ranked as number 5. Steve, let's start with you here because you had it ranked at number 70, so the other half of the top 50. What are your thoughts on seeing it make the top 50? Do you feel it's deserving, or do you feel it should be higher on the list or lower? Or again, I can't ever figure out which way, direction-wise, that should go.
I'm not disappointed with it. I kind of saw that coming at some point. I was actually wondering when it was going to show up, more so because the following it has, besides the fact that it's didn't it get canceled and revived at one point?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. I think it's a little bit better than Simpsons to some degree because it kind of still covers some other things that, I don't know, I think it's still fresh enough that it can hit some different notes that Simpsons has kind of lost over the years. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I think that the show, like, it's not one of my favorites, but it's definitely an iconic primetime Sunday animation show.
Yeah, it's definitely something that gets talked about a lot. It's definitely very much in the now and something that people are aware of. Everybody knows the characters involved. For me, oddly enough, you'd be surprised, Mike, but I didn't actually rank it in my top 100.
I refuse to.
We know your thoughts about.
Just no.
Okay, go ahead, Mike. But I only had room for 3 animated TV shows in my top 100. If I was to expand that to like 5, Family Guy probably with one other one would have snuck in. But I don't think you can deny the presence of Family Guy over the last decade and a half. But I don't know. I did not think it would be on the countdown, and I definitely did not think it would be up this high, but I was smiling from ear to ear when Dan said it just because I was picturing Mike's face. So,
of pure anger.
Yeah, he hates this show unequivocally for no reason. So, DJ, what do you think about Family Guy?
I got into Family Guy in college, and would just say that during college, coming home after, being out and you're with a bunch of your friends and you're maybe imbibing in certain things. Family Guy's a great show for that. And we were very happy to see a lot of pop culture references that we grew up with. Cobra Commander, for one, showing up on a cartoon show as a joke, which I thought I would never see. They say Simpsons wouldn't do that. But as I got older, I compared it to shows like a South Park, where they're handling issues in a much better written way, in a cleverer way. And Family Guy, this comes off a little bit more shallow in the terms of, we're just going to show you a pop culture reference and we're going to beat this joke until it's pulp. That kind of bothered me. So when I was younger and I didn't care, it was a good show to just come home at 2:00 in the morning, pop on and, giggle with your friends. But when it comes to the grand scheme of animated shows that are more geared toward adults, I would put it definitely under South Park. And I guess just for longevity's sake, I put it under Simpsons.
Yeah,
but,
and the other one that's already shown up, the one animated that has shown up is the Flintstones. And I don't think you can put Family Guy ahead of that. I think the biggest drawback from Family Guy for me, as someone who actually loves the show, is it does definitely have some consistency issues and it has its ups and downs. And for that reason, I don't see it as a top 50 show.
I'd switch the Flintstones in this easily.
I'd switch your mom for this.
Jesus.
Well, she's dead. You want to go dig her up?
No.
This has gotten really dark all of a sudden.
You said, DJ, you said imbibing. All I can think of is Dogma. Angels can't imbibe alcohol, hence all the spitting.
I am Alan Rickman.
DJ hit it right on the head, though. The best way to watch Family Guy and experience it was in college, was after a night of drinking, and was with just a few friends, because that was when it was at its funniest.
That's what it was made for. That's literally why it got a second life, because it got canceled, and then people bought it on DVD and would pop it in at 2:00 in the morning coming from the club. And,
it was probably watched more on DVD than it was on TV.
Definitely. So, yeah. I mean, again, what in that veil of intoxication, it's probably very great. But when you start putting it up soberly, again, writing-wise, and I mean, me being very highfalutin and saying writing-wise and story-wise and consistency-wise, I just don't get as clever a writing. It's essentially just a pop culture joke, callback show, where South Park is taking that pop culture reference and really just dig it into the clever part of it. I mean, it might seem like, it's a fart joke or the killing. No. They do certain things on that show where it's really deconstruct, especially the episode where they crapped all over Simpsons and Family Guy. So, yeah.
Or the Yelp episode. The Yelp episode was awesome.
Yeah. I mean, they essentially deconstructed and showed you the formula that makes Family Guy run, which is good, again, in short doses. But as a longevity of a show, it's not that great.
All right, any other thoughts on Family Guy before we move on to the next in the countdown? All righty, let's move on to our next in the list, and we are, again, what are the shows I feel like are going to be a highlight of this countdown?
41.
With Boy Meets World, we had a show that was very much the 90s, very much in the zeitgeist that we grew up in, and I feel that's the same thing with our next entry at number 41, as I remember when this debuted on Netflix, it was one of the most talked about shows, even though it was over for a decade. As coming in at number 41, we have Friends, and it's the first show to break the 700-point barrier, as it received 700 points. It was on 11 lists, as highest ranked as number 6, so it was on one person's top 10. Kevin, I will start with you here. And this is a lot higher ranked or a lot lower ranked, I should say, than you had it. I think you had it in your top 20. So you think this is a little low for Friends coming in here at 41?
It's probably a little low. I know Friends is getting maybe a little bit more hate from people as years pass, and I know obviously this is part of the influence for why we're doing this list in the first place. But I think the reason I do still rank Friends slightly higher than this is because it was not necessarily the carbon copy sitcom or whatever you want to call it. I mean, you had so many sitcoms that were following the same formula, had like the family element or this, that, and the other. You can't name too many that were like Friends before that. Maybe a couple in like a roundabout way could be compared to it, but it was very unique. It definitely was on, for 10 seasons, and it was easily one of the most popular shows for an entire generation, an entire decade. It was a top 10 rated show 9 of its 10 seasons, including number 1 rated show in the country one of those years. So it was definitely very popular. And I don't know, I think there's something to say for the format and for what they were doing. And yeah, some of the stuff got drawn out maybe longer than it needed to. And everybody has characters that they like or characters that they don't like. But there was no one that was growing up in the 90s that didn't know what Friends was and what was, what it was all about.
I just didn't care.
You had it, Amanda. You had it at 15, so actually a little lower than Kevin, but not that far off. So, similar thoughts to Kevin that you think it should be higher than number 41 on the list.
No, I think it's okay. I had it ranked pretty high on my list just because of the huge following that it had, and I think it still has to this day. I mean, I think it sparked Jennifer Aniston's career, definitely, right? I mean, not the leprechaun that she was in.
That helped too. That was a key component. That got her the We Are the Millers.
Don't crap on Leprechaun, don't you dare.
I saw that like age 6. I've been on board for a while with the Leprechaun train, but Jennifer Aniston, Joey, didn't he get his own show for a second too?
Oh, yeah.
For a second, not much longer than that.
That happened.
That did happen. I think that it probably gets more love than it does deserve just because it got drawn out after a while. And but it's just, you can't deny the iconic nature of it.
Yeah, I mean, I did grow up really loving the Friends. I still like it now. It's one of it's on like TBS or syndication a lot. I think the first thing I remember of Friends seeing was actually an Animaniacs episode before I started watching Friends, and then getting into it. And I think too, it's one of the first ensemble comedies where there was not a major character that was the center point. Like they all had like equal time, and they were all, the chemistry between the cast was certainly phenomenal. Yeah, I mean, it went on for 10 seasons, and maybe the latter seasons weren't as good as Prime, but it also just, it was so much of the 90s. I watched watching it on Netflix now, it just feels like a representation of everything 90s, from the dress to the hairstyles to the way they talk. Yeah. Like Chandler started a new way of talking. Like there's so many people that talk like Chandler now. Could you be more annoying? That became a thing and still is to this day. So, and I think it is quite funny. It was highly rated. It was like Kevin mentioned, it was very popular show. It received 62 Primetime Emmy Award nominations. It's won a bunch as well. So it's one of those shows that both had critical and fan base. So I think it's definitely deserving. 41's a good spot. I think you could make the argument it could be higher. But DJ, any thoughts before we move on to the next in the countdown?
I kind of was introduced to this show through Chandler because I didn't understand what the hell the big deal was with Friends, and somebody goes, "Hey, you watch this episode with me," and I was trying to date this person, so I was like, "Fine, I'll watch the episode." And it was I'm trapped in an ATM vestibule with Jill Goodacre, and that I thought was really funny, and I was like, "Oh, that was pretty funny." I'll stick to Chandler. And I started watching some of these shows. I was like, this show is not meant for me, but it's like the McDonald's. I don't eat McDonald's, but I understand that it's a global freaking phenomenon and I cannot escape it. So I understand that being ranked on this list, this wouldn't be ranked anywhere on my list. And it's oddly the for them to be in New York, the demographics of that show always bothered me a little bit. But I mean, that's just me.
I could kind of
chocolate love on Friends.
I think that show killed the Rembrandt's career, honestly. Whatever the hell happened to that band?
I don't know.
Well, it made their career and it killed it, because I'm pretty sure that was...
Yeah. And honestly, the only episode I remember from the show outside of the constant will they, won't they crap from Ross and Rachel was the Hootie and the Blowfish concert.
I'd peg you for a Stinky Cat episode guy.
Those are
You
good
know what I'm
episodes
talking
too. I mean, when she had the sexy voice, that was a good time. I'm not gonna lie.
I was once compared to Phoebe from Friends. I don't get it. I don't. But
I guess it's
they
better
came
than
out.
being. I guess that's better than being a Rachel. I don't know. I don't know. That how many people have seen those stupid quizzes on Facebook? Like, what Friends person are you? I always get the monkey, and I'm weird. I don't know.
You got the outbreak monkey? Oh my god.
That's the best character in the whole series.
You killed Kevin Spacey.
Alrighty, well, let's move on to the next in the countdown.
40.
Coming in at number 40, we're going across the pond for our number 40 entry. Coming in with 717 points. It was on 12 list, as highest ranked as number 1. So we are seeing another number 1 fall, the second of the countdown today. It is Sherlock. The BBC drama starring none other than the best named actor today, Benedict Cumberbatch and Martin Freeman. DJ, you had this ranked as well rather high, so what are your thoughts on seeing Sherlock fall here?
Great thing about the character of Sherlock Holmes is that you can make 75 different iterations of him and they all be equally interesting. I mean, you have Mr. Holmes, you've got Benedict, you got Elementary, you got Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes with Benedict Cumberbatch, it was something I kind of found on watch this BBC show, and I kind of I wasn't really going to sit there and watch it. And the scene where he figures out in the first episode Martin Freeman's backstory by the phone, the way they shot it, Moffat does it with the text on the screen. I just thought this is a different take from any Sherlock Holmes I've seen. And I've seen so many Sherlock Holmes versions. We were just coming off of the Robert Downey Jr. one where Guy Ritchie was doing the play it in your head and play it back thing. And this is a completely different way of how his mind works. Instead of the manic, Robert Downey Jr. kind of played it like the drug-induced Holmes. Benedict was playing it almost like Asperger's, like it's like he can't control it kind of thing. I just thought it was very, very, very interesting. I do love the show. I love the way they formatted it, where it's just 3 mini movies, kind of.
Sherlock, actual human life. Just so I know, do you care about that at all?
Well, caring about them helps save them.
Nope.
Then I'll continue not to make that mistake.
And you find that easy, do you?
Yes, very. Is that news to you?
No.
I've disappointed you.
It's good. It's a good deduction, yeah.
Don't make people into heroes, John. Heroes don't exist, and if they did, I wouldn't be one of them.
And the chemistry with Benedict and Martin Freeman is, I want to say the best. I do love Robert Downey Jr. and Jude Law. I'm not a big fan of. I like the show, but I don't think the chemistry between Lucy Liu and the other guy from Trainspotting, I forget his name right now.
Johnny Lee Miller. I don't think their chemistry is as good as Martin Freeman and Benedict Cumberbatch. It's great, and he was supposed to be Doctor Who, and I think they cast I think it was Matt Smith instead or something, and they gave him Sherlock instead, and it's such a really well written show. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Sherlock.
Yeah,
Johnny Lee Miller will always be zero cool.
He's great on that show. He's a great Sherlock Holmes as well. That show does have its problem. It does Elementary as compared to Sherlock. I think does the most interesting thing with Moriarty than any I've ever seen before, but I won't spoil it. But the Sherlock show, I think, is just a better written show, better actors, better shot.
Yeah, and I think too the thing that always kills me with Sherlock is just the production of it. Like you mentioned, just it revolutionized how we use text in movies, in TV shows. Up to that point, it was always so clunky how people would have to do it, either have people read it or show the screen. But the way they so effortlessly did it, which doesn't seem like a big deal, but considering how often and how much it's been duplicated other places, and I love the format of the 3-episode seasons that are 90 minutes each. I think it really allows for tight stories that are, basically mini movies or complete movies, really. And Martin Freeman, Benedict Cumberbatch are phenomenal actors. I mean, they're in everything nowadays, and Benedict Cumberbatch becoming Doctor Strange, and he's to me probably my favorite Sherlock. Is probably my favorite Sherlock property, more so than Elementary, which I haven't really seen, so I can't say, but even more than the RDJ movies. But
you can enjoy them. To me, that's why I like the Sherlock. It's like one of the oldest superheroes. You can enjoy them equally and separately. I can watch Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes movie, and then I can watch a TV show, and they're the same character, but completely two different ways of playing it, and I can enjoy them both, which is that's a testament to the character, I think.
Definitely.
As much as I like Benedict Cumberbatch, I can't bring myself to watch that because I'm in such love with the RDJ films. I mean, I like Guy Ritchie stuff.
It won't hurt
it. I'm scared too.
It won't hurt it because he's playing it. It's essentially it's in modern day, which is another interesting thing to do with Sherlock Holmes, because just imagine that brain. This is before Elementary came out. Imagine that brain in modern day, and the way they shoot it is just it's the same but different. I don't know how to explain it. It's just he's playing it almost like a mental disorder, where Robert Downey Jr. is playing it like he's manic. You don't know. Robert Downey Jr. is playing it like he's just a drunken
Tony Stark.
Yeah. He's playing it like himself, essentially.
Yeah.
And then he's playing like 90s Robert Downey Jr.
Wait, isn't Cumberbatch is Strange? I thought B.D. Wong was going to be Hugo Strange.
No. That's Hugo Strange in Gotham.
Benedict is
playing Stephen Strange, Doctor Strange.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, so I'm happy to see it fall here. I had it a little higher, but I'm glad it made the left. So let's move on to the next in the countdown. Again, getting into an area we haven't seen a lot, but seems like it's popping up a lot this portion of the countdown.
39.
Alrighty, coming in at number 39 with 734 points. It was on 12 lists, as highest ranked as number 8. We have Roseanne, the comedy that ran from 1988 to 1997. I think we even mentioned a little bit this already when we mentioned The Honeymooners. Kevin, I'll start with you here because you had this ranked at 13. Are you a little upset it's not any higher? Do you think it's much more deserving of being higher on the countdown than where it's falling?
I'm not surprised that it's not higher. Upset, I'm not going to get upset, but I mean,
you got to though. Get emotional about it.
This definitely, I mean, our countdown's a little bit more aimed. I think it's given a little more credit so far. It might change, but to more modern stuff and what's in the now. So I'm not surprised that it's a little bit lower. This is not a show that I necessarily liked when I was younger. It's not a show that I cared for when it was actually live. But it's something that I came to appreciate a lot more as I watched it in reruns, syndication, etc. And this was something that, it has the same type of structure as a lot of sitcoms that came before it or that came after it as far as the family dynamic. But what Roseanne did was completely different than most of those. And I give it credit for not being afraid to push the boundaries, and not in a crude way like Married with Children, in a completely different way for me, because Married with Children was more of a turnoff for me than Roseanne was. I don't know, it was on for 10 years. It, highly rated 7 times in the top 10, and obviously Roseanne as just an individual is iconic. Whether you like her or not, just don't let her sing the national anthem. But I don't know, I think this is one that has had some staying power, and this is something that you can watch, even though I didn't like it when it was live. It's something that you can watch after the fact and still today, and it still works. It still holds up, regardless of the time period that it was shot and the location that it was shot, which is actually right up our alley where we're living. But it's just something that I think you can watch and you can still get something out of it, and you can still kind of understand why it worked. So for me, I think it deserves to be probably top 25 material, but I'm not upset that it's top 50.
Amanda, this actually fell lower. You had it at 66. It's falling here at 40. What do you think about Roseanne seeing it here?
I did rank it a little bit lower, but I didn't know how much love that it would get, and I didn't want to get too much shit for having a lot of love for Roseanne, because I'm pretty sure the True Romance guys are going to come out with some Tammy comment and shit on my parade. So I put it lower just to save face. But I watched a ton of Roseanne. I feel like that was my family back in the day. My mom was so much like that. She was so reminiscent of my mom that I was like, man, I wish that my mom was as cool as Roseanne. But I think that I definitely connected with the daughters and the characters a lot. So
John freaking Goodman.
And their relationship was hilarious. their marriage was they didn't take it too seriously.
But when they got serious, it was different than when you tried to get serious, like on whatever, like on a Full House or on some of these other shows where it just kind of just felt like, oh, it's the PSA time and it's cheesy. Like when Roseanne got serious and dealt with serious issues, it was like you took it serious. It wasn't cheesy. It was, for me, something that resonated more than a lot of other sitcoms were able to pull off.
I think part of it was like the authenticity of it coming from the mind of Roseanne, where a lot of other shows that kind of try to represent similar cultures or similar lifestyles, you can tell it wasn't coming from someone who maybe lived that lifestyle, where Roseanne felt that way. I felt like, okay, these are people that that are real. They're unlike anyone else in TV, really. They don't have the... they're blunt, they're brash, and I actually growing up, I wasn't allowed to watch Roseanne. It wasn't until later till I watched it. But Mike,
even how they dealt with the cast change was kind of clever.
Yeah. Mike or Steve, any thoughts on Roseanne?
Go ahead, Mike.
I just God. Yes, John Goodman was amazing, but honestly, the only thing I can really praise this show for is basically cultivating Johnny Galecki's humor and propelling him to the Big Bang Theory.
That's because you weren't a middle-class little white girl growing up in a family like this that thought farts were funny and talked about dirty stuff at the dinner table and ate a lot of Wonder Bread, and my mom cut my hair with a Flowbee. Okay, so
does that mean you have Wondar He-Man as well?
That's obviously very specific.
Why did you have those things exactly happen to you?
Is your mom actually Roseanne Barr? Are we not aware of that?
Psychological analysis of Amanda. This episode's going on too long as it is.
Steve, any thoughts on Roseanne?
It really wasn't my favorite show. Like, it was one of those shows that if it was on, I'd watch it. But the only thing that was, I don't know, Roseanne's voice was grating on me. I couldn't really watch it all that much. John Goodman's about the only saving grace for me in the entire show. So, I mean, I can see why it's on the list, but I personally didn't vote for it.
You want to know the really funny thing about Roseanne when it comes to this show and her? Is that she is now, or she was, on Investigation Discovery doing a show called Momsters, where they profile psychotic mothers.
I can't believe that's a thing. That scares me. Alrighty, DJ, any thoughts on Roseanne?
This show is pretty easy to break down objectively. It works when John Goodman's there, and when he's not, it doesn't work. I mean, and to Roseanne's credit, love her or hate her, the show was groundbreaking for a female comedian to lead a show for this long on ABC, I believe. So yeah,
ABC.
So yeah, it's a groundbreaking show. It wasn't one of my favorite shows, but it did introduce me to, as everybody said, the wonderful John Goodman. And I thought Roseanne came off as actually charming when she was doing scenes with him. It's just like, which you gotta understand how good John Goodman is. He made Roseanne Barr charming.
much different than those scenes that she had with Tom Arnold.
Exactly.
Actually, it's going to be quite fitting with the next show we talk about. It's almost the perfect placement, really.
38.
As mentioned, I think this is the perfect placement for this show because it actually was just talked about. Coming in next, we have Married with Children. It was on 11 lists with 739 points, as highest ranked as number 3 by none other than DJ. So DJ, I'm just going to let you carry it away here. Roseanne versus Married with Children. I'm guessing you're going Married with Children.
Well, I told you Mystery Science Theater kind of formulated a lot of my comedy and my humor anyway. And Married with Children is another one. And the thing about Married with Children is it completely still holds up. I was watching it yesterday, and the jokes are still just as funny. Ed O'Neill playing, if you know Ed O'Neill off camera, he's doing a magnificent acting job here because he's this schlubby guy. And Ed O'Neill's like the most classiest, like aristocratic type person you've ever met. But on this show, he's like essentially this schlub of a dude who can't catch a break, whose wife hates him, whose daughter's an idiot, whose son's a perverted weasel, and you love them. And the greatest episodes of the show aren't just them fighting, it's them dealing with another family and them joining together to get back at that family. That's the stuck in traffic scene, the at the park with six scene. Everything about Married with Children to me is just funny. I mean, and you're talking about the honeymooners, where it's essentially Ralph and his wife, and they're just yelling at each other. And this is the same thing. Peg will give as good as she gets, maybe more so. And it's just such a funny show. Ed O'Neill at the height of his powers. And when I see my Modern Family, he's funny, but man, he brought me to tears. Still
I don't
does.
care what your little ruler says. I've been a 7 since I graduated from high school.
Well, these are 7s. The box says 9 because, well, look, lady, you're a 9. I can accept it. Why can't you?
You're very fresh.
No, ma'am, that's impossible. Because for the last hour, I've been trying to squeeze your foot into a shoe when I really should have been easing them into the box. So I'd say I'm anything but fresh. By the way, you want to tell John Henry over there to give the $100 pumps a rest?
Your ad says courteous service.
But that's not my ad, ma'am. That's the former owner's. He was killed tragically on this very spot when a size 9 exploded in his face.
Come on, Arnold. We're leaving.
I want a balloon.
You've already got one.
I still remember that same episode where he can't remember the name of the damn song, and he's in the line at a music store, and this guy can recognize every song everybody gives him, but when Ed O'Neill goes, him, never heard of it. Just can't catch a break. He's the grown-up version of Charlie Brown, married to the wife of the guy who gave you Sons of Anarchy. So yes, great show.
And Futurama as well.
Yeah.
Kevin, I know you already mentioned this, but ironically talking Roseanne and Married with Children, are you in the other end of this conversation regarding where Roseanne and Married with Children are falling?
Yeah, there's no way Married with Children's better than Roseanne. Come on now. John Goodman versus Ed O'Neill. I'll take John Goodman every single time you give me that option.
No, man.
But yeah, I don't know. I hated Married with Children growing up, and I just couldn't watch it. So maybe I need to revisit it if it holds up as well as DJ says. But I just can't picture it somehow being ranked higher than Roseanne.
What part did you hate? If I can,
everything.
Like what?
He wasn't a fan of the dogs. The dogs are annoying.
Yeah, no, I just didn't find the jokes funny, and I just found it more off-putting and crude, and I just didn't enjoy it. That's me as a younger person. Like I said, I haven't seen any of these episodes since the 1990 early 90s, so maybe if I revisit it, I'll have a different opinion.
Steve, you had this at 68. So what are your thoughts seeing it here?
I'm glad that it made the list. It's one of those shows that I remember watching when I was younger. Albeit it's not appropriate for a kid to watch anyway, but it kind of was groundbreaking in a sense because this was like one of the things that put Fox on the radar.
This was the thing that put Fox on the map.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. Like you had this, and then you had The Simpsons shortly thereafter. So I mean, between the two, that's pretty much why Fox is what it is today. And the fact that it kind of pushed the limits on everything, and it was kind of risque at the time, and and everything that DJ said on it. I mean, it's a great show. I would much rather watch this than watch Roseanne.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Mike, so you it was not on your list, but are you okay with it falling here at number 38?
No, it wasn't on my list. I don't know. Again, a lot of the shows that I've tried to put on my list and whatever else, as I've said, some of these shows I barely remember. I remember Married with Children. I remember all the different things. I remember the fights with the Darcys, both sets of the couple of the Darcys, because let's face it, see, DJ, maybe you can answer this. Is it just me, or are the Darcys essentially like Van Halen? You're either a Steve guy or a Jefferson guy, or you're either a Sammy guy.
Okay, Jefferson has Jefferson has one of my favorite lines of the series, which is "Gold, thou art my master, command me," which is a great line. But I think I was always a Steve guy because I think Jefferson was kind of Al's friend, where Steve and Al did not like each other
They're
at all.
full on nemesis, yeah.
Nemesis. Jefferson and Al they were pick at each other, but they were more friendly than Steve was. So yeah, I'm more of a Steve guy because when Al is dealing with an antagonist is when he's at his best, I think, or his worst actually. So.
I think the coolest things about Married with Children for me is when they eventually had to go out and either see Al's family or Peggy's family.
Yes, yes.
Just see the overall origins of where they both came from.
Where Al's this great football legend
in his own mind.
I'm sorry. I know this might be I'm in the outlier here, but the show is just. I'm telling you, watch it now. I watched the episode where it's him and Griff at the shoe store. The whole episode's at the shoe store, and I'm riveted. It's just so funny, and it's you're right. It's crude jokes, but it's like crude in a clever sort of way. It's just I don't know. It just worked for me. I don't understand.
Amanda, any thoughts on Married with Children?
I definitely don't think I would put it above Roseanne, but maybe just directly underneath it. I've seen this in rerun form, obviously. I had fun with it. The only thing that made me mad is that Christina Applegate, the daughter?
Yeah.
She's a total tard, and I was like, I'm never going to be like this idiot broad when I get up.
Yeah, that was half of her jokes are I'm stupid jokes.
Yeah, but I thought that the mom was hilarious.
Yeah, I kind of fall like in between DJ and Kevin. Like when I watched it in like middle school, I loved it because it was like that perfect sense of humor for me. I've seen it not recently, but a lot in the last few years. I watched a few rerun episodes. It would show up in the morning when I was waking up, like on TBS early in the morning. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Watching some of the episodes like in the later seasons, I do feel like it became too in on its own jokes a lot. It would like legitimately like flush the toilet and there'd be like standing ovations from people. And I'm like, okay, I need something more. But, it definitely has its place as Steve mentioned. It did like set the tone for the Fox network very much. It was like, that was kind of what set what you expected when you went and got a Fox comedy for a very long time. And you saw a lot of copycat shows like Happily Ever After on WB back in the day, which so tried to do the same thing with the original writers and things like that. So I would too, prefer Roseanne over Married with Children, but I think it's kind of fitting that they're both back to back here. So, all right. Well, for our next entry in the countdown, we are once again keeping it in the family.
37.
Coming in at number 37, I'm saying we're keeping it in the family because at number 50 we had Boy Meets World. At number 37 we are having The Wonder Years with 752 points. It was on 13 list, highest ranked as number 11 by none other than Kevin Optimus Solo. So Kevin, it seems fitting to start with you here. I'm certainly know that you're happy that it's beating Boy Meets World. Are you a little perturbed that it's? Well, I guess you're not emotional about it, but what are your thoughts on seeing it fall here at number 37?
Well, I mean, I'm not upset with it falling here in the top 50. I'm actually kind of happy that it's up here. Definitely, obviously, voiced my opinions in the Boy Meets World versus Wonder Years Facebook thread post or whatever you want to call it. But for the record, like I said, this is not something that's nostalgia. This is not something I grew up with. This is not something I watched as a kid. I did not watch this until I was like 27, 28 years old. And I haven't seen every single episode because I missed out on a little bit towards the end, but I've seen probably, I'd say, like 75% of it. And this show is good for a bunch of different reasons. But the thing I probably like most about number one is how it kind of captures and is almost like a scrapbook for the era that it's depicting, and how it does it in a way that doesn't feel shoehorned in. It doesn't feel like it's force feeding you. It's just like a natural illustration of Americana during that time period in, a location like that. It deals with some pretty heavy subjects. Who, doesn't know about Winnie and that whole storyline, but it also dealt with some serious stuff. So I just liked the tone. I liked the actors in it. I loved the dynamic between like the relationship between between husband and wife, the relationship between father and son, the relationship between him and his brother, everything, the relationship between him and his friends at school, him and his first girlfriend. Like there's so many, maybe you have to be, I don't know, maybe it resonates more for a male audience. I don't know, but watching it in retrospect, it just kind of took me back to a time, and there was a lot I could relate to. And I just think it's if you save that show for posterity, it's something that is valuable for more than just the relationships and the drama, but also for what it kind of shows about that time period in American history.
Amanda, you actually were not far off on this. You had this at 31, so you're right within the ballpark. Thoughts on Wonder Years?
So I shouldn't have gone after Kevin because he said everything that was cool and awesome about it. But I think that it's definitely deserving of the top 50. I think it definitely spawned a lot of other shows like Boy Meets World and all that good stuff that we already touched on. Like Kevin said, I think that it covered some pretty heavy topics, but definitely did a really great job of showcasing a different time period and what society was like then. I thought that was always super interesting. I think I caught this on the Nick at Night. Was that where it was?
Probably. It was Nick at Night TV Land. It was in a combo of both, I believe.
I think that it was definitely iconic and enjoyable, and it should still hold up, basically because of what Kevin said. It's focusing on that era and does a super good job of it.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely popular. It was in the Nielsen Top 30 for 4 out of 6 seasons. It was nominated for Best Comedy Series only after airing the first 6 episodes. So, it hit acclaim really early on, and Fred Savage was the youngest actor ever nominated for Outstanding Lead Actor for a comedy series, which obviously led to his amazing career after the Wonder Years. Not so much.
It's another one of those, though. That
It's
also
a giant mole.
It also blends the genres a little bit, because I can see just as many people saying that it's a comedy as saying it's a drama.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't consider, maybe it's just me, but I never really considered the Wonder Years a drama or a comedy. I always considered it more drama. But
me too.
Yeah. DJ, any thoughts on the Wonder Years?
I'm going to be biased here because I kind of grew up when this show was on. I was kind of the same age that Fred Savage was, and it was one of the first shows that I had seen that kind of dealt with kid stuff in an adult manner, I guess. And I find it funny. I'm like a dumb black kid from Miami, Florida. So if I'm relating to this little white kid from the 60s and having the same kind of problems I did, it kind of related to me still, and we're completely two different people. I love this show. I mean, I wouldn't have it as high as this because as I've gotten older, I've seen such better shows, but it's essentially a part of my childhood, nostalgia wise. And the child performances is going to probably be overlooked. Fred Savage we always crap about, oh God, Jake Lloyd, you getting child actors on this show that are hitting moments comedically and dramatically that are really, really veteran-like. And if you rewatch it, it's just so good. If you watch, like I said, we're comparing it to Boy Meets World. Again, that's like a traditional, studio audience kind of sitcom. This was like, again, watching a mini movie. Every episode was shot like a film almost, not like a sitcom, which I really appreciated, and it made me relate to me more. I didn't feel artificial to me. It felt like I was watching somebody's experiences, and their experiences were like mine. So I love the Wonder Years.
So you know what else is also filmed like a movie is Supernatural.
And it's realistic too.
And it's realistic for it to be back there in the 90s for the countdown.
I just killed a demon right before I came on this podcast.
Sounds like a euphemism for going to the bathroom.
When we were talking about Boy Meets World, I had mentioned about the Wonder Years, and I wasn't sure exactly when it was on or whatever, and I've looked it up since then. It ran from 88 to 93, and the way that the show is supposed to be is it takes place 20 years before the start. So basically, the actual content of the show is 68 to 73, or whatever it is. And I don't know. I've tried recently I watched the first 6 episodes. I don't know how anybody can call this a comedy. It's a drama. I don't know how anyone
dramedy.
I just don't know how anyone can call this a comedy. The first episode starts off with Winnie's brother being, killed over in Vietnam. That's not funny to me.
I hope not.
No. Well, I think too there are, it's usually with awards it comes if you have any sort of comedy, you're going to be put in the comedy category. But also I think sometimes great comedy is complemented through great drama, so it's possible to have both. But I think that's a different conversation for another day. And so let's move on to the next in the countdown.
Well, before we do, the one thing I will say about the Wonder Years, thank God I never had a father like that, because that guy scared the crap out of me, and he still does. Every role that Dan Lauria plays in...
Scary. Even in the spirit.
Yeah, even in the spirit, that's right.
All right, anything else on the Wonder Years before we move on? Alrighty, well, let's move on to the next in the countdown.
36.
Well, we haven't this episode got a lot of modern comedies unlike last week. We're getting kind of another one here, though this one's currently no longer on the air. It just finished its last season not too long ago. Coming in at number 36, we have Parks and Recreation with 777 points. It was on 13 lists, as highest ranked as number 2 by an individual. Actually, DJ, let's start with you here because you actually had it at 33, so not that far off for where it's falling. Thoughts on Parks and Recreation?
This is another one where I was like, I had low expectations because, they're going to try and make a show after The Office. It's not going to be as good as The Office. Oh, crap. It's even better to me, I think, than the American Office because it just took a lot of these characters that I didn't think I would like, and I ended up loving them. Andy Dwyer comes to mind, who's now Star-Lord, for crying out loud.
You won the award for Best Man.
Full disclosure, I voted for Ryan Gosling, but you came in a close second.
Now, you've never been married, so you didn't get your own bachelor party. But let's look ahead.
The year is 2018. America is thriving under President Nick Cannon, and tomorrow, Chris Traeger's getting married.
Who's the lucky lady? Maybe she's an upbeat gal who's nuts about fitness.
Maybe she owns a juice bar in Snurling.
Maybe it's April. Maybe I die, skydiving explosion, and then you go marry April. And it makes me sad, but if she's gonna be with somebody, I'd like it to be you.
Strange, but sweet.
Only I didn't really die, I was faking it. And I come back. I spy on you from my red Corvette. And I'm planning to kick your ass, but I see how happy you make her. And I have to walk away. I have to. And I do, slowly, in a rainstorm.
Okay, this isn't really in the spirit of what we're trying to do.
But as time goes by, it eats away at me. You're out living it up with my wife, and I'm alone in a cave, training.
Anyone else want to chime in?
I thought you were my friend.
At first, it just seemed like it was just going to be a vehicle for Amy Poehler in her comedy, but then all these other characters, Aziz Ansari, Nick Offerman, who I never even heard of before this. I saw Sin City. I still didn't know who the hell Nick Offerman was, and now I can't get enough of Nick Offerman. I forget the name of the lady that works in the place with what's her name? Quincy Jones' daughter, Rashida Jones. All these characters, Rob Lowe. It's just a very, very good show, and it kind of went in a place where I think The Office never did really until maybe the final season. Parks and Recreations, they got all these people from different walks of life with different humors that kind of really got each other and accepted each other and were a family for a lot of the show. The Office, they're always kind of antagonistic with each other until the end. Dwight and Krasinski and Pam, they didn't really like each other. Really, they would pick on each other. But on Parks and Recreation, Aziz Ansari's character and Leslie Knope and Aubrey Plaza and all of them, they're a family throughout. Even Nick Offerman, he's like the greatest character on the show.
Loves meat.
I love bacon, love breakfast. When stuff went down, Nick Offerman was there for you. And it took a while for Michael Schur, I think, to get that right, I think. And I think The Office was essentially copying the British Office. But on Parks and Recreation, there was a lot more camaraderie, I thought, that I appreciated.
Yeah, I think that's like the thing I noticed most about Parks and Recreation. It's just a positive show, and like the people in it are good people. I mean, I love The Office. I probably personally
I love it too.
Love The Office more, but I don't. One thing I would say with Parks though, it doesn't have a bad season, and Office unfortunately does. Similar to The Office, I think it took a little bit long to kind of find itself. The first season was a little shaky. But I feel like, season 2, season 3, especially when Adam Scott and Rob Lowe show up, it goes off and it sails. And all these different, like you mentioned, the characters are so different, but they so work with one another. A lot of, and it's just their ability to find hilarity in the weirdest things, like Little Sebastian or stuff like.
The alternate ego of Nick Offerman's character.
Sam Elliott. That's amazing. Using him in such a fun way. It's actually a show that when we started talking about doing this countdown, it was one that was on my radar. I wanted to watch. I finally sat down. Okay, I'm going to watch it, and I went through the entire 7 seasons in like a month, if that. I ended up loving the show. And I kind of like have a hole in my heart now since I am now done with it and finished the last episode. And the season finale is great. It just puts a great spin on it. And I love what they did with the last season, like skipping ahead a couple of years and just it was for no reason really. I mean, but it was just funny what they
for a John Hamm joke is essentially what they did it for.
pretty much. But yeah, so I'm glad it's here at number 36. So I'm happy with it. But alrighty, let's move on to the next in the countdown.
35.
Alrighty, coming in at number 35, we are getting a lot of like 80s and 90s comedies this episode, and that's continuing here. As with number 35, we have Frasier with 782 points on 13 lists, as highest ranked as number 2 by Kevin Dillon. And actually, he was kind enough to give us a clip of his thoughts on Frasier and why he ranked it at number 2.
Hello, Geekcast Radio panelists and listeners. This is Kevin here from www.smallscreensaver.blogspot.ie and www.unappreciatedscholars.com. I was asked to speak to you today because I had Frasier on number 2 on my list of the 100 greatest shows of all time, and I just wanted to tell you why. In the 90s, I was in school. Everybody watched Friends, and Frasier was seen as an old person's show, which was the one I watched. I didn't watch Friends until well into its third or fourth time on reruns. But I can understand why people thought it was an older person's show, because it wasn't very often, and it still isn't very often, that you get a show centered around a middle-aged divorcee living with his dad and stuff like that. So that's why it was so kind of unique to me. As well as that, it was a show that was on every night on what is now Comedy Central. At the time in UK and Ireland, it was called the Paramount Channel. So it used to be on every night, and I'd watch it with my mother, which is kind of a nice memory for me. In terms of the seasons and the quality of the show, seasons 1 to 7 were flat out just terrific. There was very rarely a dull moment. Slight spoiler alert, this was before they decided that Niles and Daphne had to hook up together, which once that happened, it ruined kind of one of the more interesting dynamics of the show. But like in seasons 1 to 7, you've got Frasier's many dates, which always ended in failure. As I said, the Niles and Daphne dynamic, which brought about some fantastic comedy. Frasier and Niles being so similar, and their occasional butting heads with their dad, Martin. Perry Gilpin was fantastic as Roz. She was a great foil for Frasier. They were chalk and cheese, but they had the same goals in terms of career. And of course you had Eddie the dog. Everybody loves Eddie. I think of all the 90s comedy shows, it's probably aged best due to the set design and the fashion. You know, when you watch Friends now, you're looking at some of Matt LeBlanc's haircuts and you're kind of cringing a bit, but I think Frasier has aged pretty well in that sense. The family dynamic was always on point. There was always they walked that fine line between comedy and drama, and they did both excellently. And the supporting cast, not just like Frasier's immediate supporting cast of Niles, Martin, Daphne and Roz, but like you had Dan Butler as Bulldog, you had Gil the food critic, And my personal favourite was Anthony LaPaglia as Daphne's brother Simon, who showed up for a couple of episodes and won a Daytime Emmy. So those reasons, and there are probably far too many more to mention. I love Frasier. I think even though I said that the last couple of seasons did dip, the first 7 were so good that it kind of negates any of the bad, well, not bad stuff, any of the less good stuff, if that makes any sense, that came afterwards. If you've never seen Frasier, you've hardly never seen Frasier, but I would recommend going back and watching it from scratch, because it is absolutely terrific. As I said, it's aged brilliantly. And I want to just thank Dan and the Geekcast Radio for crew for asking me to contribute, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the show, and I hope to see some of my choices higher up the list as well. Thank you very much.
Alrighty, well, thanks, Kevin, for that clip. Regarding Frasier, Kevin, let's start with you here, because you actually had it ranked at number 30, again, with your powers not being far off where it landed. So what are your thoughts of seeing Frasier fall here at number 35?
I think this is a show that if you had done this list obviously in the 90s, this show would rank higher. If you did this list 10 years ago, it would rank higher. I think now with, this influx of TV shows that have got a lot of critical acclaim from the last 5 to 6 years, it's kind of dropped a little bit. It's not a show that I necessarily watched a lot of or was a big fan, but I was definitely aware of its existence. And, in that time period when Seinfeld and Friends and Mad About You and some of that stuff was real popular, this was always the one that was taking home all the awards. I think 5 times it won either a Golden Globe or an Emmy for Best Comedy. It was, 9 out of its 11 years it was rated in the top 20 for Nielsen ratings. So, I mean, it was one of those shows that probably all the other comedies were pissed off because every year it seemed to take home the award no matter what. It was just a favorite of the award show people. But Kelsey Grammer was iconic in that time period for that show, and I definitely rated it mostly just based on its credentials and what I remember growing up, and as far as how much people talked about it and how well they talked about it. But for me personally, I'm not a huge fan of it, so I'm fine with it being here somewhere in the top 30, 40 range. I think that's fitting.
Mike, any thoughts on Frasier?
I love Frasier. Frasier is one of the most successful spin-off sitcoms. Honestly, it really is. Because if you think about it, this guy came from Cheers, and he brought his whole cast of characters with him, including Lilith and all those. I actually was marathoning this on Netflix for about 6 months before my mom passed away. We watched every single episode all the way up till about season 9, I think, and we never really got to finish it. But there's just so much to love about this show, between John Mahoney as the dad, between Jane Leeves as Daphne. Niles and Frasier, their interactions, Frasier and Ross and their interactions. It's just so funny, and it really lets Kelsey Grammer almost off the hook. Like, if you look at him at Cheers, you look at the character of Frasier, he's kind of stifled because he has his moments on Cheers. I'm not saying anything bad about him being on Cheers. He has his moments, but here it's his show. He can do whatever the hell he wants, and it's just amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I know at the time it was the biggest thing about it was like the smartest TV show ever, and the characters were speaking in the vocabulary you did not necessarily see on network TV. So, and like Kevin mentioned, it certainly has a lot of its acclaim. DJ, fan of Frasier, thoughts on it at all?
I was never really a huge fan of Cheers, but I was a big fan of Frasier because Kelsey Grammer he's Sideshow Bob. I mean, come on.
He's also Beast.
Yeah, he's also Beast. Oh, my stars and garters. He's great. I love Kelsey Grammer. I never even heard of David Hyde Pierce before that show came out, and he's terrific on that show. John Mahoney, as you said before, is great. The show's great. It's just I think the problem with Cheers was, for me anyway, it's a little bit slower and a little less zanier, I guess.
They're all drunks at a bar.
They're all drunks and depressed in a bar.
Yeah.
I mean, Frasier just had this hope and optimism to it, more so I think than Cheers. I might be misremembering Cheers, but I was in a good mood after watching Frasier. You know what I'm saying? And I really like that show.
The most optimistic Cheers ever got was, "Hey everybody, Norm!"
Norm,
That's
Norm
the most optimistic Cheers ever got.
Alrighty, any other thoughts on Frasier before we move on to the next in the countdown?
I think my problem with Frasier was I was too young and it was just over my head. It was too classy and sophisticated for my little mind. And it was around the same time that I was probably watching a lot of Wings with my mom. So it was around the same thing. Yeah, just over my head a little bit.
Superman was on.
Yeah, no one ever complained Wings being over their head. So only literally, I guess, since they're bad.
Yeah.
Again, bad joke. All right, well, let's move on to the next in the countdown because I feel like this is another one that will certainly be talked about for a variety of reasons.
34.
All right, coming in at number 34, we're going to a land we were once at previously as we return to the world of Star Trek with Star Trek the original series, coming in at number 34. It was on 12 list, as highest ranked as number 6 with 784 points. Steve, let's start with you here, because this was in your top 10. We've had Star Trek, Deep Space Nine, now Star Trek. What are your thoughts of seeing it fall here? Do you think it deserves to be higher just based upon its iconic status when it comes to TV?
You know, I think it should, but at the same time, I think it shouldn't. There's kind of that double-edged sword, because it kind of was groundbreaking at the time in the sense that it kind of it was like a Western in space is how it was kind of written, and then all the sci-fi innovations that have come from people enjoying this show specifically, and then the fact that it spawned 50 years of television and film, among other media content.
They seem to be gorged.
Gorged? On my grain? Kirk, I am going to hold you responsible. There must be thousands of them.
Hundreds of thousands. 1,771,561. That's assuming one tribble, multiplying with an average litter of 10, producing a new generation every 12 hours over a period of 3 days.
Yeah, that's assuming that they got here 3 days ago.
And allowing for the amount of grain consumed and the volume of the storage compartment.
Kirk, you should have known. You are responsible for turning the development project into a total disaster.
Mr. Barris.
And I am through being intimidated, Kirk. You have insulted me. You have ignored me. You've walked all over me. You have abused your authority, and you have rejected my requests. And this is a result. I am going to hold you responsible,
Mr.
Kirk.
Barris,
And
I'll hold you in irons if you don't shut up.
The cast alone is very memorable over the decades. Like, they're, you know, I mean, Shatner's probably the most memorable out of all of them. But then you get Spock, you get, all these characters, and they kind of got to send off into the Next Generation universe. A lot of them did, or show up in Voyager, or just, little bit parts later on. At the same token, though, it's so badly dated, it's very hard to watch if you're not a fan of it. And so I feel that while it is groundbreaking, while it is definitely a top 50 recipient, or at least top 100, it's not the strongest of the Star Trek shows. So in that regard, I think I'm fine with where it landed.
Kevin, I know you're a Star Trek fan, but I know you ranked this on the other end of your top 100. Do you feel this is Star Trek getting rated mostly based upon what came after the series, and you think maybe if you were just ranking the series itself, it wouldn't fall nearly as high?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a partial benefit of name recognition and the one that came first and the iconic characters with the Shatner and Spock, et cetera, et cetera. I think if you're going to break it down into which Star Trek shows were better in like a quality standpoint of stories, writing, plots and stuff like that, then I think it falls probably near the bottom, actually. And even though I personally rated it above all of the other iterations except for one, I think if you were really breaking it down, it would probably come closer to the bottom after even Enterprise, Voyager, etc. I find it interesting. We talked about Deep Space Nine way earlier in the countdown, and we were curious if we would see anything else. And we haven't heard from any of those other ones, so it's finally coming in here. I don't have a problem with that as long as there's one more that we haven't talked about yet that still shows up.
Yeah, I wonder if where it falls. That's the question.
What could you be talking about?
I have no idea. Star Trek Enterprise, of course. Amanda, any thoughts on Star Trek?
I'm a Picard girl, so I'm obviously going to rank something. I'm going to rank that a little bit lower. As far as Kirk, I'm going to rate Kirk a little bit lower than Picard here. I do love me some Spock, and I think that it's so iconic, and it spawned all of these spin-offs and even movies. I definitely like the newer movie iterations better than the dated material that is Kirk and Spock from back in the Disney. I do think that it deserves to be, I would say, in the top 50 still.
I can understand the saying that it spawned off some stuff, but I don't think it's as easy to say that with this one. I mean, I think maybe you could say it spawned Next Generation, even though it was like 2 decades later. But
it was like the cornerstone for an entire
Right, I get that, but I think Next Generation is really what spawned all the other ones that came after it. Like I don't know. It's a debate for another day, but I don't disagree with it being here and what you're saying.
DJ, any thoughts before we move on to the next in the countdown?
My stepfather, who's the biggest Trekkie I know, ingrained in me that Captain Kirk is the baddest man in the galaxy. So, but I was introduced to Star Trek through Wrath of Khan, one of the greatest sequels ever made. So I didn't really get into the TV show till I got a little bit older. And it's kind of a different Kirk from the movies to the TV show. Different Kirk. The TV show, he's a little bit more reserved and not as zany as he is in the movies. He's not that way in the TV show that much. That's his bizarro evil Kirk. But yeah, it's iconic. It's groundbreaking. An optimistic, not apocalyptic future for once. So yeah, I understand why it's on this list.
All right, let's move on to our next in the countdown. And for our next in the countdown, we're actually going to talk about it in real time.
33.
For number 33, Mike might be upset that it's not number 24, because coming in at number 33, we have 24. It was on 13 list.
Star Trek.
Later, Pike. Just so you know.
It was on 13 list, 788 points. It's highest ranked as number 9, but none other than DJ Valentine. So it's fitting. DJ, we ended it with you last time. We'll start with you here. Thoughts on 24 falling in at 33?
Never seen a show like this before. Never seen them do this. And I know they're cheating. They go into commercial. Yeah, whatever. Shut up. You've never seen a show that counts down a day in the life of during a season, or at least I hadn't at the time. I saw this when I was in first season when I was in high school, and there's been I think there was a running joke with me and my friends that David Palmer was the president of the United States. It wasn't George Bush. It was David Palmer. He was awesome. He was doing things that presidents should do. And Jack Bauer. I mean, you watch Kingsman. He's now an iconic character that we would never, one of the most iconic badasses we've ever seen on television. And for the show to be very pulpy in its stupidity sometimes, because it's not the most brilliant of shows, but you've essentially created this character and you drop him in, kind of like a John McClane-esque type person. And the format of the show was revolutionary. I had never seen a show count down 1 hour an episode like that, the way they did it. I thought it was unique and it was great and it was enjoyable and cathartic as hell. And if you're a right wing, you would really love it because they torture and kill terrorists without any compunction to the Geneva Convention. They don't care about that stuff, especially Jack Bauer.
Jack does specifically. I don't know about the rest of the cast, but Jack does specific.
Tony Almeida would kill a terrorist now and then.
Okay, yeah, Tony would, but on a whole, the entire cast, no, probably not. I think Jack, Tony, and Nina are probably the exceptions there.
Nina.
Oh, God,
one of the first shows you've seen a character, spoiler alert, I guess, brutally murder a woman on national television, and he's the hero.
Yeah.
So, Mike, I'm taking you're a fan of 24.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely love 24. I don't think it went on too long, but
8 seasons.
No, I'm saying, like, okay. Yes, I know it's technically it's 9 seasons if you count Live Another Day, but yeah, it did go on 8 seasons. But I'm saying that with the way the show's format was, it in a good way it felt like it was longer than what it actually was. So I'm saying the 8 seasons, 9 seasons didn't really feel like, it wasn't a blink you'll miss it kind of thing, but it was like, hey, we're following along, and this is high action, and this is, hey, look, there's Spock before he was Spock, because in the first, few seasons, Zachary Quinto was this idiot tech guy. I love 24 for Kiefer Sutherland alone. Jack Bauer is easily one of the most badass action stars of this last couple of decades.
Yeah, I have a kind of funny story with 24. I started watching it late, and this was before it was on, like, Netflix streaming was a thing, and I had back when Blockbuster still existed, and we started renting it from Blockbuster, and I had this deal where, I could basically rent something. I paid a fee, and I could rent as many things per day as I wanted. And we, like, my wife and I, basically went through this entire series bit by bit. So much so that I would, show up to Blockbuster multiple times a day. That was, down the street just to get the next disc. So, I basically got labeled the 24 guy for how fast we went through the series. I guess shows you how much lively our lives are, I guess. But I'll disagree with Mike in the sense that I do think it did go on too long. It got to the point, it got a little bit too predictable. It had a formula to it where you're like, okay, who's the traitor this season? And when you're dropping nuclear bombs every other episode to try to, it got a little too crazy. I think by the end, 7th, 8th season were a little much. But at its height, it was a fun, action-packed thrill ride. It again, like DJ mentioned, the format of it was completely unique. Doing it in real time with 24 hours and using the different panel storytelling, and yeah, there were some contrivances with that. It basically was LA with no traffic somehow, but but I think it also came around at a good time too within that time period. So like Mike mentioned, Jack Bauer is a badass and he's a fun character. So,
and when you have a character, we talk about James Bond and Jason Bourne, those guys also have kind of, I don't say shallow plots, but they do such awesome things. It kind of distracts you from how mediocre this the plot is. And Jack Bauer did that as well. The season could suck, but as long as Jack Bauer was killing people, you were still enjoying it. So yeah.
Alrighty. Any other thoughts on 24 before we move on to the next in the countdown? Okay. Well, let's move into our next in the list. And again, we're getting into an area we once got before, and I think it's going to be kind of a fun 1-2 hit with these next 2 entries.
32.
We've had one late night talk show so far with Johnny Carson. We're getting our second late night talk show at number 32, as we have The Late Show with David Letterman. It was on 12 lists, 791 points, as highest ranked as number 14. Mike, actually, I'll start with you here because you had this ranked at 56. And I know you're a huge Johnny Carson fan. So what do you think of the fact that David Letterman is falling higher on the countdown than Johnny Carson?
It's somewhat of a travesty, but it's not as much as a travesty as if Conan comes after this. I like David Letterman. I think what he did with The Late Show was really interesting. He had guests on to promote stuff, but he also did some really, really good comedy. You look at some of those top 10 lists in the early to mid 90s, they're just comedy gold. The way he carried himself, the way, he held with the guests, his monologue. Probably the only late night comedian I can actually sit there and enjoy a monologue from outside of Johnny Carson. It's just so good. Having it fall here, I think it's all right. Like I said, as long as Conan doesn't show up after this, I'm fine.
Kevin or Amanda, any thoughts on David Letterman?
I didn't have any room in my top 100 for the late night shows, just because I was trying to stuff so many other primetime shows in there. But I don't know. I don't have a problem with it being on there. I do have a problem with it being higher than Johnny Carson, though.
Yeah. See,
I also left all the late night shows off. I just couldn't I just couldn't fit them in either.
I mean, I could have put them on, but it would have taken up like 7 of my spots because then I would have had to put like all the ones that I like on there. And if I was going to put one on, it would have been Johnny Carson, and then it probably would have been a drop off to something like Conan or like or Jimmy Fallon or something like that afterwards.
See,
I've never been a fan of Letterman.
See, I love Letterman. I think his comedic style is extremely unique and unlike any other comedy out there. And I think he brought a new type of kind of awkward, or I guess alternative, to use a cliche word, to late night talk shows. I actually feel his show was better than Johnny Carson's, and yeah, Carson's impact is probably greater on the world of comedy, but I've always felt that Letterman's overall monologues, his comedic style, he took more risks. He did a lot of new different things, where Carson just kind of had his thing and he did it really well. But Steve, any thoughts on the David Letterman show falling here at number 32?
I'm not really a fan of Letterman. For me, I would much rather watch like Jimmy Fallon or somebody like that. I don't know. I like a lot of the other late night talk hosts more than some of these older veterans, because, not saying that they didn't pave the way or that they don't deserve to be here, I just don't prefer to watch them. I would much rather watch any of the ones that are on now, but that's about my opinion on it.
DJ, any thoughts on the Late Night with David Letterman falling here at 32?
You could kind of tell, like, when Leno went off the air, he won the ratings, but Letterman was way more respected because he's kind of like a comedian's comedian. And when I watch talk shows like this, I the kind of talk show hosts I like are the ones that who are fast, smart, and have control. And Carson probably is the best when it comes to having all three of those things, but Letterman's right there, because when a guest does something that's going against what the host wants to do, you see Fallon panic, or, I mean, I'm not against Fallon. Fallon does some very funny stuff, but he's not as quick on his feet as Letterman is. The guy's dealt with crazy Crispin Glover, for Christ's sake, Madonna, Drew Barrymore flashing, Joaquin Phoenix, and he never doesn't seem like he has a plan to get out of these situations. Conan, for me, I know we found out here that Conan's not that high. I think Conan's also on that list of, he's very quick to not lose control of the show. But Letterman and Carson, I think, were the best at it. Where I'm just going to see how's Dave going to get out of this one. That's how he does it. He's never off guard by any of the stuff. And I'm not a huge talk show host person, but I know Letterman he's iconic. You can't deny him.
Definitely, it's actually going to be fitting as we're getting into our next in the countdown at number 31.
31.
Alrighty, I say it's fitting because we had David Letterman at 32, and at 31, we were having the guy that replaced him, as in the Colbert Report, coming in at number 32 with 791 points. It only beat David Letterman by 3 points. It was on 12 lists. It was actually on fewer lists than, it was on 13 lists, so it was on more lists than David Letterman, as highest ranked as number 4. I think I'll actually start with this one, because I am, the Colbert Report, Daily Show definitely go hand in hand. I am a lover of the Colbert Report. I remember when it started as like a spoof commercial that ended up becoming a show, watching it and wondering, how is this show going to last with this character? And it ended up lasting for 9 years. In such a smartly written show. We talked about late nights, but I feel it's in a separate category because it's not necessarily late night comedy per se, as it deals with a lot with politics and things of that nature. So I'm actually really happy that it fell here. But Steve, I know you also have it on your list, so any thoughts on the Colbert Report?
I don't know, I just really enjoyed his show. Him and Jon Stewart, I believe, are probably the best at all of the kind of newsy, weird, he's kind of got that nice touch of some of the stuff that Jon Stewart has, and some of the Letterman stuff, and some of the, he kind of has different things he dips into, and I think it kind of plays out well for him.
Mike, any thoughts on the Colbert Report falling here?
I actually had to go back and watch this after I saw him guest on a Law & Order SVU episode as one of the baddest, one of the most interesting villains on that show. I like him. I think he's really funny. I think he's doing a bang-up job on The Late Show now. I don't want to say he necessarily replaced David Letterman because Dave really just retired and they needed to find somebody new. And I'm just glad it wasn't another Saturday Night Live reject. Yes, I'm looking at you, Seth Meyers.
Who will not be on this list.
Please, if Seth Meyers is higher than this, then we need,
It's counseling.
I forget who posted it. Somebody posted about Arrow. Arrow not being in the top 50, you have failed this list. If Seth Meyers gets above Stephen Colbert here, yeah, we really need to seriously rethink this.
Amanda, any thoughts on the Colbert Report?
I freaking hate this show. I'm so bored with it. I don't care what he has to say. If I want to watch the news, I'm just going to watch the freaking news. I don't need to hear your so-called funny commentary about it, and I'll make my own opinion. Thanks. So that's...
Jeez. Harsh. She's a Seth Meyers fan.
But what do you really think? Kevin, any thoughts on the Colbert Report?
I mean, I think the Colbert Report and the Daily Show and Real Time with Bill Maher, even though that he can piss me off more times than not, but I think all those shows are good for what they're pointing out. And even though they're doing it with a funny take, they're also still calling orange and calling out politicians for being stupid. And I think there's a place for that, and that's refreshing compared to the indoctrinated views that we get from the political channels. But like I said, I just didn't have any room for him on my list. But yeah, I would put this in this. I would probably put Daily Show higher than the Colbert I can't talk report.
DJ, I know you said you were a fan of like late night talk shows. I don't know if that considers that of Colbert Report, because I guess it's technically a talk show. But any thoughts on it here?
It's one of the. I mean, I might be forgetting maybe Jiminy Glick. I guess is one of the few talk shows that's hosted by a character, not an actual. I mean, Stephen Colbert is an actual person, but he's essentially playing a big middle finger to the Republican Party for the entire show. So yeah, I give it credit for that. I watched the Daily Show more for its political commentary than its guests usually. I mean, sometimes I watch the guest stuff. Yeah. Same thing with the Colbert Report. I would, if I was watching it, I'd just watch it for what they're saying about politics. And Stephen Colbert, when I heard he was replacing or taking over for David Letterman after he left or retired. I was like, that's interesting, but it's undeniable. The guy is very, very smart. So, and brains, like I told you, smart, fast is in control. And if you have any doubt of how in control Stephen Colbert can be, watch him deal with Bill Maher that he just had on maybe 2 days ago. And Bill Maher, who is essentially created to anger people, I mean, who's also very smart. He's giving it right. I mean, he doesn't pull any punches, and Colbert hangs with him and outdoes him just as well. So he's a very smart individual. The show itself was, I don't want to say groundbreaking. It was just very, very different in what that you were seeing on TV. So yeah, I'm not a humongous fan of the Colbert Report. I was more a Daily Show guy, but I can respect it.
And it was nominated for multiple Emmys. It actually broke the Daily Show's streak for winning Outstanding Variety Series. Ironically, The Student became the master in that in 2013. So every year it was out, it was nominated for an Emmy and won Peabody's as well. And Stephen Colbert himself won a lot of accolades. And again, we talked about with Key and Peele how Luther showed up in Correspondents' Dinner. I mean, Colbert did a thing in front of Congress for something, I forget what it was, and I do think he's been a great replacement for Letterman. And to me, it took him like 3 episodes to have one of the best interviews on TV. Period. When he interviewed Joe Biden, and it was fantastic, and I recommend it. It's nothing political whatsoever. It's actually just a really great conversation that you would not expect in a late night talk show. At least usually it's if you look at Jimmy Fallon and Stephen Colbert, it's like, oh, that's the adult show. And that's one for children. So.
Yes. NBC getting no love today.
Not really.
Well, we'll see if that changes when we move into number 30 on the list.
30.
Well, we're getting to our second sketch comedy show of the episode, but this is actually a classic sketch comedy show, and it's our second British show of the episode too. There's always been like one episode per show that I'm like, wow, I did not expect that to be on the countdown, and that's it for this. This is it for this portion of the countdown, because at number 30 we have Monty Python's Flying Circus. It was only on 10 lists, but we received 105 points, so it's the first show to break the 800-point barrier. It was highest ranked as number 3. I was not expecting to see a show of this nature fall on the countdown. My first experience with this show was, I think, seeing late-night infomercials on Comedy Central telling me to buy the videos of it. But, DJ, any thoughts on Monty Python's Flying Circus?
I'm very fortunate. I've been on the show that like 3 of my, and I might have forgotten where to put this, and I hate myself. Monty Python, Mystery Science Theater, and Married with Children. Those are like stuff that introduced me to comedy essentially. So nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. I mean, it's the Monty Python used to come on TNT every night at 7:00, and I would just sit there, eat my dinner, and watch it as a little kid. My grandmother would sit me down, eat your dinner, and I just watch Monty Python's Flying Circus. It's a show that I don't think would work now. It is it's non sequitur insane. It's good for ADD because it goes everywhere and anywhere.
One of the cross beams has gone out askew on the treadle.
But what on earth does that mean?
I don't know. Mr. Wentworth just told me to come in here and say that there was trouble at the mill, that's all. I didn't expect a kind of Spanish Inquisition.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. Our chief weapon is surprise. Surprise and fear. Fear and surprise. Our 2 weapons are fear and surprise and ruthless efficiency. Our 3 weapons are fear and surprise and ruthless efficiency and an almost fanatical devotion to the Pope. Our 4. No. Amongst our weapons. Amongst our weaponry are such elements as fear. I'll come in again.
I didn't expect a kind of Spanish Inquisition.
And people, they remember Monty Python probably mostly for Holy Grail and stuff like that, Life of Brian. But Monty Python's Flying Circus it's a great show with now historic comedians, John Cleese, Eric Idle. I mean, it's great guys on that show. Terry Gilliam, I think. So yeah.
You say the show is basically ADD. It would really work today if you think about it. With the way the world
maybe I'm
is.
right. Maybe you're right. It could work. Maybe because it's. I mean, the joke of the show is like it would go from one thing to the next without any sequitur whatsoever. So yeah.
Amanda or Kevin, any thoughts on Monty Python's Falling Here? I know we talked about sketch comedies a lot. We're finally getting a classic sketch comedy. Is it just not a relief, but a surprise seeing something different?
It's the wrong kind of classic sketch comedy. That's not the one I was looking for. I know I'm in the minority, but I have a strong distaste for all things Monty Python related. I just don't find them funny at all. So it's just not my style of humor.
Monty Python, Married with Children, and what was the last one?
All the 90s sitcoms.
I'm still
or
mad
David
about
Letterman. That's the last one.
Yeah.
Kevin has no love for Fresh Prince. So.
I just have.
Why don't you love him? Why don't you love him?
I at least like those shows, though. I can't even watch Monty Python stuff. I've tried probably on 10 different occasions to watch either the show or the movies, and I just am bored out of my mind instantly.
So you don't like Holy Grail? You don't like it? It's just a flesh wound or any of that stuff?
None of it. I hate Terry Gilliam.
Wow. Ooh, wow. Okay.
You just lost friend Kevin.
Sorry, DJ.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
It's just like I said. It's just not my style of humor. Certain humor works for certain people, and that's just not my style.
Alrighty. Any other thoughts on Monty Python before we move on to the next in the countdown?
Apparently, the show didn't dare to be stupid because Eric Idle was Retgar at one point.
Yeah, he was. Wild weed, ground out weed, and any bunk.
Alrighty. Let's move on to our next in the countdown.
29.
Coming in at number 29, we have Lost with 832 points. It was on 11 lists. It was ranked number 1 by one person. Kevin, let's start with you here because you had it highest ranked among all of us at number 17. I know this was a huge show at the time. It had some falling off after the season finale and people didn't like it, but is Lost a show you were a fan of?
Oh yeah, I'm a huge fan of Lost all the way through, including the ending. I'm one of those that does not mind the ending at all. I think that's probably why it's not a little bit higher, was because some people really did hate hate how it ended. The question was not whether Lost was going to be on the countdown; it was just where it was going to end up falling. So, right here around the top 30, I think that's fine. I mean, I had it 17 because I personally like a lot of it, but it has its issues. I can see some people kind of being critical that maybe some seasons are better than others. Same situation for me. They do a lot of flashbacks and kind of telling the background of certain individuals, and there were a couple characters that I really didn't connect to, that every time I knew it was going to be an episode for that character, it was like a letdown, and I was like, oh, I guess I got to sit through seeing another one of her stories to get to something good later. But it was a phenomenon. Come on. I mean, everybody was talking about Lost. Everybody would watch it and then have debates and questions, and just the way they were able to do the mystery element of this show is something that was unlike anything that came before it. So I think top 30 is perfectly fitting for Lost.
Amanda, this is actually spooky in the Lost sense, as you ranked this at number 29, and it actually is 29. So I don't know if you have lost like black smoke powers or something like that.
Monster.
But what?
I like to call it slut magic, but it's a real thing. But I only saw the first season of Lost, but I just know that it's such a huge phenomenon, a big following. I don't know why I just couldn't get into it. This was like my early years of college, so I was just drinking and partying and being
watching
cool
Family
and not
Guy.
watching TV. Yeah, eating my SpongeBob cereal at 2 a.m. and it just wasn't something that I could super get behind, just because I wasn't in a TV watching time of my life really. But I did enjoy it. I thinking back on it now, I feel like it had it was a little reminiscent of the feel of like Heroes, like its style. So I don't know. I guess I'm wrong because nobody else is commenting saying.
I mean,
yes,
I guess it's definitely. I mean, I could see the comparison because they're very mystery based and a lot of like keeping you in the dark of what's really going on. So I definitely could see the comparison.
The actors, the actresses, and the characters and the development of those characters is what wins Lost for me, I guess.
DJ, any thoughts on Lost?
I'm gonna be the outlier here. This is more of a Damon Lindelof issue I have than a Lost issue. Damon Lindelof, I'll be as nice as possible. He has great ideas, I think. He just has very, very, very sloppy, and purposefully so ambiguous follow through with all of them, where he doesn't. And I know some people like you were saying love the ending of Lost, but it's a thing that I've heard his Prometheus commentary where he says, I make things ambiguous on purpose because I want people to the shows that there's no answer to, people talk about longer. And I'm like, okay, well that's great, but you're essentially saying I want to make things not enjoyable at the end. I want you to. So I mean, and again, I know I'm the outlier. I know a lot of people who love the ending of Lost, and I watched Lost all the way through. One of my favorite episodes of television is The Constant, which I love that episode so much. And I know why it's on this list. It was a phenomenon. J.J. Abrams gets way too much credit for this by his own admission. It's essentially Damon Lindelof's brainchild. So, and because of that, that's why at the end, I kind of went a little bit down on it because I did not enjoy the ending of it. It seemed like they were kind of making it up as they went.
I don't think you're an outlier because I think a lot more people had a problem with it than.
Yeah, I mean, and I understand people who don't, why they would, because I know people who like things ambiguous. It's just that he has this track record of making everything he does have an ambiguous
and I agree,
non-final finale.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I remember though in that moment though when we're going through the seasons thinking, I do not want to be the people in charge of trying to figure out how to end this.
Yeah, I understand. That's why it's like I can't even really hate him for this, and that's why I mean he has I bring it up because of his track record of his stuff after Lost. He's still doing the same, making the same mistake, which I don't want, like he did for freaking Tomorrowland and stuff like that. But when it came to like season 3, I'm like, I don't know where this is gonna go. I don't know how they're gonna end this, and nobody is gonna be satisfied at the end.
Right.
They kind of wrote themselves into that circle, which I was like,
Yeah, it ended up making itself a show that was going to be harder than almost any other show that I've ever seen as far as coming up with a way to finish it so that people are happy.
Yeah. It's like go ahead and end Doctor Who. Come up with a final ending for Doctor Who. It's not saying it's as good as Doctor Who.
I'm sure the finale of Game of Thrones will probably piss me off more, but
well, everyone dies. I can tell you that. Everyone's dead.
It was all a dream. All right. Any other thoughts before we move on to the next in the countdown? All right. Let's move on and continue as we get down to the nitty-gritty of this week's countdown.
28.
We are already down to number 28, so we're getting into that very elite category where we get into the top 25. At this point, it should no longer be a question, does it belong? Is it simply, does it belong in this echelon of the countdown? This one, I think, I'm not sure when it comes to what falls here at number 28, what the opinion will be, but I am super happy about this falling here, as in number 28, we have Arrested Development. It was on 14 lists with 846 points, actually beat Lost by a whopping 14 points, was actually a lot for this list. It was highest ranked as number 9, so no one ranked it number 1, but being on 14 lists does show you there is a lot of love out there for that of Arrested Development. Though I was the only one on the countdown that ranked it. I don't know. You guys are crazy. I love Arrested Development. It's just, to me, one of the funniest shows, period. I know that's very subjective, but I love its style. I love its using the narrator in fun ways. It's certainly, I'm surprised it got 3 seasons. I know Netflix brought it back for the 4th season, which wasn't really as good, but at its height, though, it just, I don't know. It was so super clever, meta in a lot of cool ways. So I'm very happy for it falling here. DJ, any thoughts on Arrested Development?
I got through most of season 1, and it's like a show I recognize as being very, very good. It's just I could never get through all of it. I mean, and from the season I saw, I mean, Jason Bateman's great, and Tambor is great, David Cross is great. And I have friends who watch it religiously, and I kind of like watch it vicariously through their stories of it. But I just never could get through the whole season. But I know it's very smartly written, and it's very great. It's one of those shows that I think when I get old and I have nothing else to do, I'll probably pop it on and burn through it. I'm like, why wasn't I watching this live? I am the reason it got canceled. But I'm not a huge fan of it. But again, I can see why it has its feverish fan following.
Kevin, any thoughts on Arrested Development?
I mean, I kind of expected this one to make the countdown. This is one of the ones that I was talking about earlier when I said that I was under the kind of having the thoughts that we were going to see more modern sketch comedies than classic. This one, and I think there's still another one out there that we possibly could see, but it might get edged out. But I can see this one. It definitely has a following. I think it is funny and it does have its place. For me, I ranked a few other classic sketch comedies instead of a couple of these modern ones, but I expected to see this one on the list. So I'm not surprised that it's on the list. I'm surprised maybe that it's quite this high.
I mean, it certainly has a lot of accolades. It's IGN, our old friend, ranked it as the funniest show ever. So it didn't rank it as So
is that good or bad for its credit?
I'm not sure.
Keep on getting it wrong.
Curious to see what people have to say, because I think there'll be people who may say it's one of those where it's like, I think no one will be happy no matter where it falls. So, alrighty, let's move on with the countdown.
27.
All right. Well, coming in, this is a first for the countdown, as in this is the first time in one episode that we're getting 2 animated shows. As with number 27, we have Futurama with 858 points. It was on 12 lists, as highest ranked as number 13. So it was actually on fewer lists than that of Arrested Development, but people tended to rank it higher. Steve, you were the only other one on the countdown that had Futurama on their list. So what are your thoughts seeing it here at number 27?
Well, being that I ranked it at 27, it's actually kind of funny, but
again, you have that Amanda Smoke Powers type of thing, so that's impressive.
Smoke monster.
I have a crystal ball. So yeah, I really enjoy this show more than some of the other shows. I'm actually glad it beat out Family Guy, and for me, I really like the dynamic between the characters. I like the fact that it's set in the future for the most part, even though there's like time travel elements throughout the show. It's really kind of wacky. I enjoy the interactions between Bender and Fry, among everybody else, and I don't know. I find the show a lot more entertaining to me as an adult than watching some of these other, like Family Guy. I feel like it's beating me over the head with a shovel. Like I enjoy it, but it's not the same as watching Futurama. Futurama, I have like I don't know. It's like getting the Simpsons vibe without being as dumb.
I guess that's I guess the way to say it. I mean, it certainly has its credibility regarding being smart. There were 3 PhDs on the writing staff, 7 master's degrees, and over 50 years at Harvard University among the writers. So the people who are writing the show are rather smart individuals, and I do think it's a lot smarter than people give it credit for, even myself included, because I remember watching it when it came after The Simpsons, thinking, oh, it's just a Simpsons clone, but another like Family Guy left, came back, and I think you realized at its height, it's a great show.
Well, even the fact that it got canceled and it came back.
Yeah. Mike,
times.
any thoughts on Futurama?
From what I've seen of Futurama, I've seen several episodes over the years. I've never actually watched the show all the way through. I know it's one of those shows that keeps getting canceled, keep coming back. That's fine. It's great. I'm happy for the voice cast that they get to continue to do this show. I like the stuff with Fry. I think the coolest thing about this show, though, is John DiMaggio as Bender. That essentially lets John DiMaggio do whatever the hell he wants to do, voicing that character. And it's just so awesome. And if you think about this compared to when we were talking about Married with Children, you've got Peggy Bundy as a one-eyed space captain.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Kevin, so we had Flintstones, we've had Beavis and Butthead, Family Guy, now Futurama. Did we get that order correct?
I think you could say that we've basically got it right with Futurama being as the highest out of the 4 that we've talked about so far. I think there could be an argument for Flintstones maybe being a little bit higher. I was surprised to see Family Guy actually make the list, and I'm definitely surprised at the fact that we're possibly going to see 6 animated shows on the top 100. I thought we might see 3, and we're going to probably end up seeing 6, I would guess. So that's the most shocking part for me.
DJ, any thoughts on Futurama falling here?
Very few. I've never really been a big Futurama fan, and I'm hit in the back of my head every day when I say that. When people say, "Why don't you not like Futurama? What's wrong with you?"
You mean to tell me there's a million different Leroy Jethro Gibbs running around smacking you upside the head?
Smacking me. I'm getting attacked, but the Nozo's hitting me. But no, I've never been a huge Futurama fan. I can understand again, I even kind of gave up on The Simpsons after a while. But yeah, it's just never appealed to me. I get the characters. It does have Bender, who, Joe DiMaggio is awesome, but John DiMaggio is awesome, but I just never been into that show.
All right. Amanda, any thoughts before we move on to the last of today?
I think that I'm a little appalled with myself because I didn't rank this, but I love this show. I think Beavis and Butthead might be slightly higher for me personally than Futurama. Definitely higher than Family Guy, though. I think that you guys have kind of beat it to death, but I have fun with all the characters, especially Bender, like anybody else. Leela, pretty awesome. I actually have friends who named their daughter after Leela from Futurama, so
there's that.
Yeah, that happened, and I think that it's
why not Zoidberg? Come on.
Feed my son, Zoidberg.
That was their doctor, but I think that I'm not really sure about it being this high, honestly.
All right. Well, be interested in hearing what other people have to say regarding this. So, one more to go before we end today's episode, before we enter into the Elite 25. But let's see what falls at number 26.
26.
All right. Well, I'm not sure if the Browncoats are going to be happy that it's here or just happy that they're unhappy that it's not higher. As coming in at number 26, we have the cult classic show in Firefly with 862 points on 13 lists, highest ranked as number 1. So we are seeing our third number 1 fall regarding today. DJ, I'll start with you here because you did have it highest ranked among all of us. What are your thoughts on Firefly?
Screw you, Fox. Screw you. I think if this show came out now, it would be a bigger deal. I mean, this is Joss Whedon banter at its best, I guess. I mean, that Buffy and Angel were shows I watch religiously, but Firefly was, new and different and had a world to it. And people go, "Oh, why do you guys keep making comic book movies? You guys keep making remakes. Why don't you make something different and new?" This was different and new, and nobody freaking watched it. And now it's gone, and we're stuck watching the 15th iteration of Spider-Man. No, I really like Firefly just because of the camaraderie and the writing, and I think it just never got a chance to come to fruition. I think it was something there in the middle. I'm not saying it's a perfect show. There are its flaws. One, that Fox aired it out of order because they suck. But I think if it would given some time, it could have been really, really special. And Nathan Fillion, I mean, that's the first time I've ever seen him in anything. Before he came on Buffy as like the crazy preacher guy, he was awesome on this show, and he's now been like a geek icon
This
since
is all
the
the money
show's
Niska
come
gave
on.
us in advance. You bring it back to him, tell him the job didn't work out. We're not thieves, but we are thieves. The point is, we're not taking what's his. Now, we'll stay out of his way as best we can from here on in. You explain that's best for everyone, okay?
Keep the money. Use it to buy a funeral. It doesn't matter where you go or how far you fly. I will hunt you down, and the last thing you see will be my blade. Done.
Now, this is all the money Niska gave us in advance.
I'm good. Let's think for everyone. I'm right there with you.
Gina Torres, same thing. Adam Baldwin, who was probably famous from Full Metal Jacket, but it's Jane. It's just camaraderie. It's essentially Space 18. So yeah, I
Space 18.
love
I like that. See, it would have stayed around longer if that's what they called it. Probably.
Nobody had a mohawk. So yeah.
No one pitying fools. That's where
nobody pitied any fools. No fools were pitied.
Mike, any thoughts on Firefly falling here at number 26?
I've seen a couple of episodes here and there over the years, but I don't know. All as I can say right now is we all better hide until next week, because the commenters are going to come out and flambaste us for having this at only 26. Because like DJ said, and like Dan said, like everybody else said, this show has a massive, massive following. And those followers are loyal to a lethal fault.
They're deadly.
I mean, they got a movie made. I mean, you got to give them. They certainly are organized and powerful.
Which introduced the world to Chiwetel Ejiofor, by the way.
Yeah.
So yeah, Serenity's also badass.
I was the weird one and actually saw Serenity before Firefly, and actually went to see it not even knowing there was a TV series. I don't know how I missed that, but that's what happened with me. And I actually didn't end up watching Firefly until earlier this year. We did a homework episode for Talking in Circles where we try to fill in our Geek Weeks box, and Firefly was one for me. And I think I came into it way too late. I can still recognize why people would love it, but it's, watching a show with so much hype, nearly a decade after it debuted, it didn't have the same impact on me as I'm sure it did with people then, especially seeing Serenity, which is a movie I actually really do adore and like a lot. So maybe I'm the weird one and like the movie more than the TV series. But certainly there's a lot of creativity there. The motif of using the Western and Asian culture combined with space.
Or Chinese, I think it's Japanese, right? Japanese first words.
I think so. Yeah. So
I
like that though. I think at times it did go a little too far with it, but again, it's a show that if you look at the shows that were canceled too soon, I think this was ranked like number 1 on that list, and it's often the show that's pointed to as, you know, why no one likes Fox or trusts Fox, or, you know, and if it did go on longer, it probably could have had a bigger impact, and it was of course not its fault regarding quality, and did kind of launch the career of Joss Whedon, or at least, you know, made Fox feel bad to give him like 8 other shows after this, at least. I don't know.
Whitney was on the air for 3 seasons, and this got like 8 episodes. Whitney, one of the worst comedies I've ever seen. And Marina Baccarin is probably the only thing good on Gotham. So yeah, I got a little sore spot in my craw.
I think just because of Firefly, there's a lot of shows that Fox have let stay on longer, just to fear out of people would get angry at
Gotham. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. But all right, well, let's take a quick break here and come back and kind of discuss briefly of the top 75, I guess, of the countdown so far.
Hey guys, this is JD from the In Session Film Podcast. Every week on our show, you can join my co-host Brendan and I as we review the latest films that's out in theaters. It also inspires us to discuss a top 3 list of some sort, and we have a lot of other fun movie discussions as well. It's always a blast. And we also have a show on Fridays called our Extra Film Podcast. This is a show that gives us the space to talk about the latest indies and art films and other classics that we normally just don't get to talk about on our main show. You can find our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, SoundCloud, TuneIn Radio, Player FM, and more. In fact, you can just see everything about us, including our social medias, at InSessionFilm.com. So join us every week. We'd absolutely love to have you.
Remote Control is the new TV podcast from the Geekcast Radio Network. We'll be covering TV shows and topics from the year 2000 to whenever now is. We'll have special themed episodes entitled Pilot and Season Premieres, as well as finishing finales. We'll also have Season Pass episodes, where we take a look at an entire season of a TV show. Remote Control can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, and www.geekcastradio.com. So tune in, because we are all remote controlled.
So we have 75 down, 25 more to go. DJ, I guess we'll start with you here. Thoughts on, I guess, the countdown today? Any big surprises? Anything that overall, how do you feel that we're ending up as we have 25 shows left to go?
I didn't think talk shows would be this high. Colbert and Letterman are pretty high on the list, which surprised me. I mean, I'm not against either one of those shows. It just that was shocking, but I think it's going pretty well. I'm very upset that Sesame Street is so damn low. My education is dependent upon a Cookie Monster and Grover teaching me how to spell. So yeah, I'm a little upset about that.
Yeah.
And the count teaching us how to count.
Mike, after being off a week, coming back now, what are your thoughts on the countdown so far?
I think it's interesting. I think we've been saying throughout the first 3 parts of the countdown that this is going to be our most interesting top 100 because it is television and it is so subjective to various opinions. I kind of wish I was here last week because I really want to eventually, I'm probably going to do this. I want to write this whole big, long, I don't necessarily want to call it an essay, but I want to write this whole big, long thing about the Big Bang Theory because I really don't think people are looking at it the way I look at it. I look at it as an evolution of characters. You look at Sheldon in season 1, or even season 3 when they do the flashback story of how Leonard and Sheldon first met, and then you look at Sheldon now in season 9. The dude has changed so much in the entire show. But anyway, as far as today's episode, I'm perfectly fine with where some of the stuff fell. I don't think we have the animated thing right. I think it needs to be flip-flopped and have the Flintstones the highest. That's just my personal opinion, but I don't know.
Didn't you have a problem with the Flintstones?
No,
Brought it up?
I don't think so.
It's been a while. But Amanda, any thoughts on the countdown so far?
I'm disappointed at some of these rankings. I think this episode especially, I was really disappointed in. I don't think that some of the things that made it to this episode should have even been on the list, honestly. Supernatural, again, being so low. I'm not happy about that. So scarred. God, I do. Don't even... Oh, I just got the vapors. But, I'm just disappointed in some of the rankings, and I'm a little bit worried because a ton of my stuff hasn't made it on there, and there's just not enough room for some of the things that I know should be on the top 25 to make it all on there. So, if I don't see I Dream of Jeannie on this list anywhere, I'm going to be seriously disappointed.
Kev, I know last week we had a lot of modern stuff, but I feel like this week we didn't really get as much. I think it was much more varied, kind of like the weeks before. So, at least happy that we're getting more variety this half of the countdown so far.
It's hard to keep getting modern stuff when we've already named almost all of it. So, no, I mean, there's still some to go, but I'm not surprised because like I said, there was only one more modern comedy that I was expecting to see, and that was Parks and Rec, and we saw that. So I think the rest of the modern are going to be a little bit more drama, action oriented. We have been through 75 shows, and I still have 72 of my top 100 left to be named. So all I know is I'm glad that the 29 people that made up this list do not dictate my television viewing habits, because I would not be happy. But no, there's a ton of modern stuff that I need to catch up with, so I am not upset with the modern stuff being on here at all. I just have a big blind spot to the last 5 to 10 years. But man, even trying to block out some of the ones that I thought, well, maybe are my personal bias, I still had like at least 40 shows that I was 100% sure were going to make the top 100, and at least half of those aren't going to make it. So I think there's a lot of classics going to be left on the wayside.
All right, Steve, final thoughts before we sound off for today.
I'm a little sad that my number 1 and number 3, I believe, went away today. Kind of bothers me. But actually, I think my whole top 3 or 4 are gone. I still have high hopes that a couple of them are going to show up at some point. I have a few, and I'll mention those when we do the wrap up if they don't show up. But I think I have about a good half, almost half of my list has shown up at some point. So I'm quite happy about that. It's just wondering which ones are going to show up from here on out.
I'm just happy my number 1 is in the top 25.
Same here.
Yeah, my number 1's gone.
Sorry,
and 2.
Steve.
My number 3 is still here, so we'll see.
How do you know your number 1's in the top 25?
Because I do. It has to be.
It's going to be left off
If
the
it's
list.
not, there will be war.
I wouldn't cross your fingers on anything at this point. There's a lot of good shows out there.
It would be the biggest shock in history if my number 1 is not in the top 25.
I don't know what your number 1 is. I know what Mike's number 1 is.
Dan knows what my number 1 is, and I think he would agree. There is no way my number 1 is not in the top 25. No way.
I wouldn't be doing this countdown if it was. But anyways, you can also let us know what you think in a variety of ways. You can go on Facebook, Twitter, of course, going to Geekcast Radio. We're having a lot of great conversations, so make sure to do that. But I'll toss it over to Mike as he signs us off for tonight's episode.
I believe as of this recording for part 3, the part 2 post has somewhere around 98, 99 comments, so it didn't really break what part 1 did, which was like, well, yeah, yet, because keyword there is yet, yes. As Dan said, head on over to Facebook, Twitter, Geekcast Radio Network on Facebook, at Geekcast Radio on Twitter. Go to geekcastradio.com. I'm not sure how we're going to do this because we haven't talked about it yet, but when we do the finale, if anyone wants to call in to do voicemails to leave their audio opinions, you can call 502-526-5821. There's a 5-minute time limit. Please be sure to leave your name or screen name or whatever. Unleash the geek in you and keep on channel surfing.
You've just listened to Geekcast Radio on the Geekcast Radio Network. There are several ways to get in contact with us or leave feedback for the show. First, visit the website, geekcastradio.com, where you can comment on all of our different podcasts. Second, you can rate our show and leave us feedback in iTunes. Third, follow us on Twitter at Geekcast Radio. Fourth, become a fan on Facebook. Go to facebook.com/GeekcastRadio. Call the voicemail line 502-526-5821. Please remember to tell us the show you are leaving the message for and your name. So until next time, Unleash the geek in you.